It all begins in a devastated world, where danger lurks around every corner in the form of terrifying monsters. Famine and discrimination reign amidst the chaos, turning people's lives into a literal daily test of survival. In the middle of a fierce war, a young soldier named Pluto tries to fight, but realizes his weapon is completely out of ammo. With no way to defend himself, he becomes an easy target as enemies fire mercilessly in his direction. The young man ends up getting hit by several fatal shots and collapses to the ground without any chance of escape. His life comes to an end, along with the fall of his country, and all that remains for the soldier is total darkness. But right after, in the middle of the complete emptiness, a mysterious light appears before his weary eyes. A glowing hand filled with energy reaches out to him, offering a new opportunity. As he takes hold of this divine hand, he feels an unbelievable power surge through his entire being. The soldier ends up making a miraculous comeback and prepares himself for what comes next. When he finally opens his eyes, Pluto realizes he has ended up in a completely different world from his own 3 years past since he arrived in this new reality. Living as an ordinary student, he wonders if destiny gave him a second chance to fix his old failed life. The most important day has finally arrived, and the teacher tries to hype up the class for the awakening ceremony. The teacher yells for everyone to gather on the field, as this moment will define each of their futures. In this new world, dungeons filled with monsters have popped up everywhere and changed the course of human history. To fight the threat, humans awakened special classes ranging from C rank all the way to the mighty S rank. In this competitive society, the class you awaken determines absolutely everything in your life. Young Luna Viramont, heiress to an influential family, has just awakened the legendary class of Holy Purifier. The crowd is shocked to learn that she scored 95 talent points, securing her spot at the top of society. The students start whispering anxiously, because the next one in line is the famous Pluto. The announcer finally calls the young man to step forward and begin the test. He walks with confidence, being well known for holding an incredible 200 talent points in the academies. As he passes by the heiress, Pluto receives a very serious and focused look from the girl. She gives a slight smirk and straightforwardly tells him not to let her down in front of everyone. As usual, the young man ignores the comment and keeps moving forward in a cold, silent manner. He finally approaches the sacred orb while the crowd chants his name non-stop. The young man is instructed to place his hand on the glowing orb to begin his awakening. The instructor thinks that having a prodigy with so many talent points is a true blessing for the academy. If he can pull off an S-class, he will have a guaranteed spot in the most powerful guild in the nation. That guild is the legendary Blue Dragon, considered the #1 in the entire country. Managing to get in means gaining wealth, prestige, and a guaranteed future forever. On top of that, it is the only guild controlled directly by the country's military government. Since Pluto met a miserable end in his past life due to being weak, he does not want to make the same mistake twice. This time, he is determined to become the strongest warrior in the world to protect his homeland. Suddenly, an extremely intense burst of blue energy takes over the entire place. Everyone believes it is a legendary class, but Pluto feels that something is very off. A surprised expression quickly takes over the faces of both Luna and the ceremony instructor. The energy turns into dark smoke, revealing that his class is a necromancer. A deafening silence fills the courtyard at the revelation of that mysterious aura. The crowd is disappointed, remembering that necromancer is considered the worst C-rank class in existence. The young man is completely devastated, wondering where he went wrong to get this result. His status panel confirms the terrible reality that he is now just a level 0 necromancer. The instructor deeply regrets it, as he had high expectations for the young man's potential. To make matters worse, the skill to summon only 1 skeleton per hour makes Pluto feel doomed to fail. But a system window suddenly pops up, announcing that all summoning restrictions have been removed. This means that with his magic energy, he can summon as many soldiers as he wants all at once. And this is just the beginning, as his creatures will get more and more powerful as he levels up. The young man visualizes a massive army of the undead marching under his ruthless command. With no limits on his summons, Pluto realizes he will become a one-man army. Pluto knows this skill buff is enough to surpass any S rank, and decides to focus on the important professional interview happening in 1 month. His thoughts are interrupted by the instructor, who rudely yells at him to snap out of it and leave the stage already. The young man finds it ridiculous to see how quickly people change their attitude after finding out his class is only C rank. With his new hidden power, Pluto knows the dungeons will be a breeze and decides to fully focus on leveling up as fast as possible. The other students watch the young man smile and start gossiping, thinking he lost his mind because of the bad result. Right then, an arrogant classmate approaches with a cynical smirk to mock the former golden boy. The bully says he scored an A rank and offers to carry Pluto, as long as he accepts being treated like his little pet dog. Pluto recognizes the guy as Adrian Blackwood, someone who always held a random grudge against him out of pure jealousy. The bully and his girlfriend start laughing out loud, imagining the legendary genius crawling behind them like an obedient puppy. The young man simply ignores the cheap taunts and keeps walking, because trash like that does not deserve a second of his attention. Suddenly, a familiar voice comments that she is impressed by his patience in ignoring that talking garbage. Pluto turns around and realizes it is Luna, the new S-rank prodigy who just crushed the test. He makes it clear that he is in absolutely no mood for games at such a delicate moment in his journey. Ignoring her classmate's cold shoulder, the girl surprises him by suggesting they go hunt monsters together to help him level up. The young man questions if a legendary warrior like her wouldn't mind carrying a mere C rank like him. Luna explains that she wants to boost his chances of getting into the military elite, and helping him level up is the best way to do it. She enthusiastically holds his arm, assuring him that she trusts his potential and that his 200 talent points do not lie. Pluto realizes the girl is extremely sharp and sees way beyond the surface appearance of a simple necromancer. The young man thanks her for the generous invitation to lower herself to his level to help him, but decides to decline the friendly offer. He gently removes her hand from his arm and firmly states that he prefers to walk his own path alone. Pluto's plan is to get into the military guild on his own merits, and for that, he only needs one thing. He intends to focus on reaching an insane level that will crush the ego of any current A-rank or S-rank warrior. Upon arriving at the Academy's dungeon lobby, he decides to enter the dangerous trial of trials to evolve as fast as possible. The other students stare at the young man as he heads determinedly toward the extreme challenge portal. In this solo trial, the monsters range from level 1 to 5, and once the battle begins, it is a win-or-lose situation. Even though the risk is extremely high, the amount of experience granted by these creatures is insanely higher than normal. From afar, Luna and the elite class teacher spot the young man stepping through the glowing portal. The teacher is shocked to see a C rank make the crazy move of going in there, thinking the young man lost his mind out of grief. Luna tries to calm her own thoughts, knowing Pluto is not the type to throw his life away over something so silly. Even so, the teacher decides to stand guard at the portal entrance to call for backup in case things get out of hand. The young man is teleported to a mysterious floating island surrounded by clouds and a protective barrier. He realizes he is in a temporary safe zone and takes the moment to take a deep breath and focus. Pluto knows very well that as soon as he takes his first step outside the barrier, there will be no turning back. Just ahead, a pack of level 1 shadow wolves watches the young man with extremely fierce and aggressive glares. Seeing 10 hungry beasts right on the first floor, the young man perfectly understands why no newbie dares to risk it in here. Wasting no time, Pluto uses his skill and spends part of his energy to summon his first 2 skeleton soldiers. He commands his new undead warriors to focus all attacks on the creature leading the enemy charge. The skeletons rush forward swiftly and land powerful blows, taking down the first wolves with extreme ease. The young man smiles as he sees the experience notification and realizes the challenge will be a piece of cake as long as he spams his summons. As he watches the creatures fall, Pluto remembers how fast his reputation flipped in no time at all. He went from the peak of national admiration to the favorite joke of every gossiping student in that academy. The young man still recalls the instructor's harsh tone, demanding that he leave the ceremony stage with his head held low. To pay back that humiliation, he summons more undead and expands his skeleton army to keep up the sweep. Adrian's toxic words offering a pet collar keep echoing loudly in the MC's mind. All of this reminds him of the fury he felt in his past life, when oppressors looked down on him for being inferior. The arrogant people of this new world share the exact same repulsive look as the tyrants from his old home. The young man vows to himself that he will never be stepped on again. Determined to reach the absolute top with his C-rank class, Pluto spends all his remaining energy and summons his current max limit of 10 skeleton soldiers to surround the monsters. He knows this small initial undead horde is more than enough to effortlessly clear the first floor. To achieve maximum combat efficiency, the young man sends exactly 2 skeleton warriors to crush each enemy. The undead warriors with glowing red eyes advance relentlessly against the forest enemies. With fast and precise movements of their swords, the skeletons slice through the shadow wolves and secure a ton of experience for the young man. Pluto quickly does the math and realizes he will manage to hit level 2 in less than 10 minutes with total ease. He notices that his mana regenerates every minute, which means he will have a full recharge of his strength very soon. The young man smiles confidently as he plans the creation of a massive, invincible undead army in a very short time. Without hesitation, Pluto orders yet another of his fearsome soldiers to aggressively charge against the rest of the beasts. The accurate attacks keep clearing the battlefield quickly, popping up constant notifications of defeated enemies. A strong wave of energy surges through the young man's body, indicating that he just leveled up to level 1 much faster than he expected. Leveling up restores part of his mana and grants extra attribute points, allowing him to summon even more soldiers mid-combat. Since magic energy is his main source of survival, the young man decides to dump all his extra points into that attribute. Now that his max limit has increased to 15 summons, the battles promise to get even easier and more one-sided. Satisfied with the result of the starting floor, Pluto mentally prepares himself to face the challenges of the trial's second level. Right at the start of the second floor, his undead show their worth by defeating gray wolves that are much stronger and tougher. Despite the ease, Pluto knows he is still very fragile physically and needs to keep a few guards close by so he won't be caught off guard. The young man levels up again and realizes this consecutive trial is the most broken place in the world for fast-track grinding. This progression creates a perfect loop where higher levels generate more mana, which in turn allows the creation of an ever-growing army. As he goes even deeper into the dungeon, he runs into level 4 mud horses that look way more dangerous than the wolves. One of the creatures neighs in an intimidating way, snorting dust and glaring at the young man with red eyes full of pure fury. Pluto simply ignores the monster's flexing and orders his army to attack without mercy, since he views them as nothing but experience points. One of his skeleton warriors strikes the fierce horse with tremendous force, starting a deadly clash in the middle of the brush. The beast ends up getting sliced down quickly, yielding the young warrior another solid amount of points for his constant leveling. Pluto notices that one of his skeleton soldiers just turned to dust, indicating that the monsters here actually pack a punch. But that is no problem at all for him, as he simply snaps his fingers and summons more undead until he stacks 30 of them on the field. The overwhelming skeleton army steamrolls every enemy on the floor, triggering a flood of experience notifications on the young man's screen. He hits level 5 quickly and receives a system notice that another major restriction on his C-rank class has been completely removed. The evolution lock has been undone, allowing his bone soldiers to absorb the strength and take the form of defeated opponents. Basically, any strong enemy Pluto eliminates along the way can be turned into a zombie version loyal to his army. As he defeats more powerful opponents, his undead army will gain a massive variety of forms. This incredible hidden power sets him on an inevitable path to becoming the feared and respected underworld king of that universe. He also remembers that necromancers gain new skills every 5 levels, unlocking a technique called gunpowder skeleton. This new skill allows the creation of kamikaze skeletons to deal explosive area of effect damage, something Pluto is eager to test out in practice. He soon finds the perfect target on level 5, where a pack of heavy brute beasts known as black-backed beasts resides. Since the skin of these creatures is too thick for ordinary sword attacks, he decides to test the power of his new explosive toys. The young man snaps his fingers with a smile on his face and begins the process of converting his regular undead soldiers. The new gunpowder soldiers emerge carrying massive explosive barrels decorated with creepy red skull designs. Pluto stares at the look of his new creations for a few moments with a completely blank and speechless expression. He thinks their look is incredibly tacky and rigged up, but decides to overlook the aesthetics as long as the final blast is powerful. A skeleton with its head on fire runs in a funny way, carrying the huge gunpowder barrel straight toward the target. The creature reaches the pack of wild beasts without hesitation and lights the fuse to trigger the detonation in the middle of the battlefield. A deafening, massive explosion of fire takes over the entire scene, sending dust and rocks flying everywhere. The damage caused is simply absurd, teaching the young man that he should never judge a soldier just by the tacky look of his barrel. He realizes he will need better magic gear to increase his mana capacity if he wants to keep using these explosions. Despite stacking a ton of experience this round, Pluto notices with frustration that the trial, unfortunately, does not drop any useful loot. He decides to exit the challenge portal to buy new items at the shop, leaving the elite class teacher completely jaw-dropped by his sudden presence. The woman is completely stunned and startled to realize that a C-rank newbie came out completely unscathed after hitting level 5 in just 1 hour. Knowing that the boy's 200 talent points hide something unbelievable, she decides to urgently report the situation to the principal. In his luxurious office, Principal Julian Kingsley complains about his secretary's dramatic interruption in the middle of his mountain of boring reports. The principal gets extremely annoyed to learn he was bothered over a mere C rank when the academy has higher-ranked prodigies. The teacher counters his rudeness by asking how strong he thinks a necromancer is, who hits level 5 in just 1 hour of training. The man yells in surprise that it is impossible, because a weak summoner would be torn to shreds in a few minutes by the aggressive beasts of the first level. The teacher remains in complete shock, unable to understand how the young man pulled off such an impossible feat for a beginner. Meanwhile, Pluto walks through the city and realizes that good gear is way too expensive, deciding to get his items from dungeons instead. Upon arriving at the dungeon entrance, he sees a group of bruised adventurers complaining about the extreme difficulty of the rhino lair. The young man ignores the danger warnings and decides to challenge the dungeon on gold difficulty to test his true skills. As he enters the lair, Pluto is impressed by the scenic view and quickly summons his loyal warriors to begin the hunt. With the clear goal of defeating the boss and collecting valuable treasure, the young man readies his spell with 35 points of max mana. Thanks to his fast magic regeneration, the young warrior's skeleton army keeps growing non-stop along the way. Upon running into the tough level 5 stone rhinos, he realizes his army can defeat them while taking almost 0 casualties. His warriors advance in coordination and bring down the armored beasts with ease, securing more experience points for the young man. Suddenly, an extremely loud and menacing roar echoes off the stone walls of the dungeon, announcing the arrival of a larger beast. A massive rock rhino comes charging in at high speed, ready to crush any intruder who dares to cross its path. Pluto quickly notes that his skeleton's regular physical attacks are useless against the monster's heavy natural armor. However, the MC has an ace up his sleeve and decides to use his new special fire technique to solve the problem with a bang. The young man snaps his fingers and instantly transforms one of his regular soldiers into a dangerous gunpowder kamikaze skeleton. The soldier rushes swiftly and explodes against the armored beast, incinerating the monster in a flash and yielding a ton of experience for the youth. Realizing the monster's heavy defense is no match for his mobile bombs, he decides to turn all his warriors into explosives. A series of deafening blasts sweeps the dungeon layout, eliminating several rock rhinos all at once with extreme ease. The young man happily hits level 6 and calculates that defeating the Grand Dungeon boss will be enough to make him evolve again. The gigantic Rhino King emerges from the shadows, revealing itself to be the feared final boss of that dangerous, rocky territory. The colossal stone beast lets out a furious roar that makes the entire dungeon floor shake in a terrifying way. Even though he is surprised by the massive size of the level 5 boss, Pluto stays calm and gears up for the final showdown. With a cold, ruthless glare, the young man mentally warns the giant monster that it has already stepped into his inevitable dead zone. Nearly 100 skeletons carrying gunpowder barrels surround the boss from all sides under the MC's silent command. A cataclysmic explosion consumes the boss in a massive fireball, wiping out the creature instantly and yielding a massive amount of experience. As he levels up to level 7, Pluto is surprised to see that the boss was completely vaporized before it could even formulate a reaction. Amidst the ashes of the defeated boss, a glowing item with a strong purple aura drops from above straight toward him. The young man catches an incredible giant stone staff of epic quality, which grants a defense bonus and an impressive 30 mana points. The youth celebrates and realizes he struck gold by getting the perfect item for his class right in his very first dungeon. He remembers that gear rarity in this world is color-coded, with purple epic items being extremely hard to get. The young man is extremely pleased to realize his luck is off the charts for landing the exact piece of gear he needed so badly. He knows a rare item like that would cost a small fortune at the city's equipment shop. With the staff's extra attributes and his allocated points, the young man's total mana jumps to an incredible 75 points. This means that from now on, Pluto can summon an army of 75 undead soldiers all at once. Upon returning triumphantly to the main lobby, he happens to cross paths with the arrogant Adrian Blackwood's group. The bully goes back to taunting the young man, saying his generous offer of help is still on the table if he wants to beg on his knees. Pluto simply stares at him with a look of complete boredom, showing zero care for the nonsense the guy is spouting. Adrian keeps laughing and arrogantly claims that nobody in the academy would ever accept carrying a failed C rank in their hunting party. The bully throws his arm around the young man's neck to flex his blue, rare rank weapon, trying to humiliate him in front of everyone in the hallway. His idiot friends join in on the mockery, saying Pluto should take the deal so he doesn't spend the rest of his life completely solo. The girl in the group also mocks the MC, claiming with disgust that no woman in her right mind would ever want to be near him. Pluto's patience finally reaches its limit, and he steps right up to the bully leader's face to deliver his final message. With a dark, soul-chilling glare, the young man tells the bully to go lose himself along with all his insolent words. The bully gets furious at the bold response and grabs Pluto by the collar, yelling with hatred to try and intimidate the boy. His girlfriend quickly holds him back to stop him from doing something crazy in an area where physical fights are strictly banned by law. The young man simply fixes his clothes calmly and decides to walk away, leaving the entire crew of furious bullies behind right then. An armed security guard pops up in the hallway, yelling to find out what is going on between the elite students there. Adrian quickly flips his attitude and pretends to be Pluto's best friend, lying to the guard that they were just messing around. The guard yells that the place is not a playground and orders everyone to disperse immediately and stop causing trouble in the hallway. The bully takes advantage of the guard leaving to whisper a dark threat that he will finish the young man off the moment he catches him outside. Right after, the bully squad walks away confidently while making plans to hit level 5 later that same day. Pluto admits to himself that he would have completely wrecked that bully right there in the courtyard if nobody had stepped in. The security guard says that trash like that is beyond saving and offers to help if they try to bother the young man again. Then the guard tries to warn Pluto that his chosen dungeon is way too tough, suggesting he look for an easier spot. However, the guard wearing sunglasses suddenly freezes up and breaks into a cold sweat out of pure nervousness while looking at the young man. He notices the youth is carrying the powerful giant stone staff while selecting the next dungeon he intends to grind solo. The guard panics as he remembers that this epic weapon is only dropped by the boss of the hardest dungeon in that rocky region. He finally figures out that the C-rank kid managed to beat the powerful boss completely solo and without anyone's help. Ignoring the guard's shock, Pluto steps into the portal again with the goal of picking up the pace and clearing all his daily entries. The guard just watches the red glow of the portal, confirming with amazement that the kid actually chose the challenge on gold difficulty. The man reflects in fear that soloing a gold dungeon at that level is something extraordinary that not even S-rank warriors can pull off inside. The colossal boss roars with fury in front of the boy and his army of gunpowder skeletons ready to blow everything up. Pluto just smirks and taunts the giant monster for daring to show its teeth in front of his overwhelming power. The boss is completely annihilated in another catastrophic explosion, leaving the young man with only 2 daily attempts left to burn. The giant rhino spawns again on the next run, tired and out of breath. Having to face the young man once more on the battlefield, Pluto mocks the stone monster's stubbornness, as it can't seem to learn its lesson, even after being blown up so many times in a row. Another massive blast echoes through the dark cave, reducing the mountain of stone to pieces and securing more points for the youth. The young man orders his troops to keep advancing ruthlessly, using his kamikaze units to clear the path with ease. The final daily run is cleared with absolute success, leaving the dungeon boss lying lifeless on the dusty floor. The young man's inventory gets packed with rare weapons and armor of all kinds, which he plans to sell for a solid profit later. With his daily dungeon limit tapped out, Pluto decides to rest to prepare for the important professional exam the next morning. His updated status panel shows he has already reached level 9 and holds 85 points of max magic energy. The next day, the renowned Aurora Academy is completely packed and buzzing with students anxious for the exams to start. The students comment excitedly that the Blue Dragon Guild is sending scouts and that a dedicated classmate already managed to hit level 4. Pluto overhears the casual chatter and is surprised to realize that the leveling pace of other regular students is insanely slow. To the young man's annoyance, the annoying Adrian Blackwood reappears to drop another one of his toxic and provocative comments. Flaunting a shiny new set of red armor, the bully brags about reaching level 5 and asks if Pluto found someone to carry him. Yet, Suddenly, the principal's voice echoes across the courtyard calling for silence to kick off the academy's traditional professional admission exam. The man announces that the top 5 students will be recruited by the Blue Dragon, and the champion will win a highly powerful, epic piece of gear. The news about the legendary prize and the elite recruitment leaves the students shocked and even more eager to compete. The principal introduces Elder Aaron Crowley, one of the most respected and powerful members of the guild, boasting an endless mana pool. The exam rules state that each student must face monster hordes created by the Elder in individual rooms to rack up points. The imposing figure of Elder Crowley observes the young competitors with an extremely stern and commanding gaze of a veteran warrior. The students panic as they remember the Elder's insanely high level, fearing his summons will be way too powerful for them to handle. The veteran calms the crowd by explaining he will cap his creature's power at level 1 and will end the test if anyone gives up. The explanation relieves the general tension and gets the youths hyped to show off everything they learned in their training. Adrian takes the moment to mock the C-rank MC, challenging him to try and secure even a single point in the exam. With his eyes glowing a menacing shade of purple, Pluto coldly responds that he is more than ready to play with him right now. The bully accepts the challenge with open arms and proposes a bold wager to see who scores the highest overall rank in the exam. Adrian starts laughing hysterically and uncontrollably, finding it a complete joke that a C-rank is trying to compete with his A-rank still laughing. He dares Pluto to name the humiliating penalty that the loser of that insane bet will have to perform in front of the whole school. The bully suggests the loser should crawl on the ground and bark like a dog, and the MC calmly accepts the bet without hesitation. The official event announcer yells into the mic that the highly anticipated Academy admission exam has officially begun. All the students begin marching toward their respective individual testing booths scattered across the massive complex. The principal lets Elder Crowley know that all competitors are in position and that the protective barriers have been activated. The powerful level 75 mage kicks off his summoning magic, making a massive glowing magic circle appear on the floor. Green magic circles begin appearing simultaneously in every student's room, including the room reserved for Pluto. The young man notices the shift in magic energy in the room and mentally prepares to face the exam's first challenge. Several bronze soldiers armed with sharp spears emerge from the green magic circle, ready to attack the young summoner. Holding his epic staff firmly, Pluto summons his skeleton troops to test the toughness of those living bronze statues. The bronze warrior statues lose no time and charge at high speed, wielding their sharp spears against the MC. The young man's skeleton army rushes forward with fury under the direct order to attack the bronze enemies. The sound of metal echoes through the room as the skeleton warriors strike the living bronze statues with precision. Pluto notices that the statues fall easily and reflects that it would be very tough to defeat them if he still had only one soldier. Elder Crowley notes with surprise that someone has already cleared 5 enemies and decides to increase the number of monsters spawned in that booth. The young man calmly watches a new portal open and more bronze warriors emerge in the middle of the battlefield. Even with the enemy numbers going up, Pluto knows his skeletons are strong enough to handle all the heavy lifting. He organizes his troops strategically, sending one skeleton to deal with 2 bronze statues at a time. In a controlled manner, Elder Crowley is completely jaw-dropped to realize that 10 of his bronze soldiers were wiped out instantly. The Academy principal praises the mysterious student's unusual talent, having no clue whose name actually belongs to that brilliant score. Curious about the young man's absurd performance, the principal orders the overall leaderboard to be displayed on the screen immediately. The man is left completely speechless and lets out a gasp of shock upon reading Pluto's name, leading the ranking list. The chart shows the young man isolated at the top with 15 points, while the best A-rank students can barely get close to his mark. The elite teacher smiles and comments excitedly that the boy's score keeps climbing every second with no signs of slowing down. The panel shows the young man reaching the incredible mark of 23 points extremely fast and with no visible trouble. The principal still can't bring himself to believe such a feat. While the teacher asks if he finally believes her words, the man speculates in horror if the boy's C class somehow broke through known limits thanks to his 200 talent points. Elder Crowley remembers he was the best in the city with just 99 points and realizes that Kid is a peerless prodigy. Determined to test the true limits of the young hero, the Elder decides to channel even more energy to scale up the challenge level. Meanwhile, in the booth, Pluto finds the test way too easy and compares the current challenge to the extreme difficulty he faced before. Suddenly, a massive beam of green light ignites in the room, drawing the young man's attention to the rise of an unexpected force. A literal wall of bronze opponents rises from the magic circle, leaving the young man temporarily textless in front of so many monsters. The young man notices the absurd density of energy in the area and feels that the challenge has finally started to get actually interesting. A massive horde of bronze statues blocks the entire scene, presenting an overwhelming number of opponents all at once. However, Pluto just smiles as he realizes the situation has turned into a numbers game, where he holds his class's perfect advantage. The young man channels his mana and calls forth 30 skeleton warriors to prove once and for all which of the two armies is the strongest. Meanwhile, in Adrian's room, the arrogant warrior swings his heavy axe to cut through the bronze statues with boundless rage. Proud of his raw strength, the villain celebrates defeating over 10 monsters and believes Pluto will never manage to catch up to him. The villain remembers the talent evaluation day that happened 2 years ago, when he scored a solid 77 points on the initial test. Back then, Adrian celebrated his guaranteed A-rank result big time, while other students begged him to help them out. But his joy was very short-lived upon hearing the announcer declare that the mysterious Pluto had hit an incredible 200 points. The young prodigy walked calmly past all the shocked students, instantly becoming the absolute center of attention. The spectacular result put Pluto at the top of that year's entire national ranking, drawing applause from the whole student class. Even the teacher asked all the elite students to try and keep up with the young prodigy's frightening growth pace. Adrian swallowed hard with pure fury and silent envy upon receiving the direct order to try and match someone so far out of the norm. The villain felt immense pride for being the second heir to one of the 3 grandest, richest, and most influential clans in the entire city of Aurora. He found it a complete joke to have to lower himself to keep up with a poor orphan like Pluto, and swore to surpass him. Back in the present, Adrian strikes the enemy's mettle in anger to prove to himself that his berserker class is far superior. The villain smirks with malice and vows to crush the C-class kid, eager to see him crawl and bark on the ground in front of the whole school. The bully laughs victoriously upon hitting the 15-point mark in his testing booth, firmly believing he is leading the ranking. However, Pluto has already stacked 79 points in his testing booth due to the ruthless slaughter carried out by his skeleton troops. His loyal undead soldiers keep fighting bravely and destroying the hard bronze statues with extremely fast strikes. One of his skeletons leaps into the air with a heavy axe and delivers a fatal blow against an opposing bronze warrior's head. Pluto rests his staff on the ground majestically as he hits the absurd mark of 100 points, surrounded by piles of broken bronze pieces. The young man notices he lost nearly half of his summons in the intense battle and understands that casualties are inevitable against so many beasts. Even though he is tired, he knows he can't let his guard down and summons new soldiers to top off before the next horde drops into the arena. Pluto notes with concern that he spent half of his mana energy and wonders if the other students' test also got hard this fast. In the control room, the principal is stunned to see the kid hit 100 points, shattering the historic record. Right mid-test, Elder Crowley calculates in shock that wiping out that amount is equivalent to facing the powerful boss of a silver dungeon. The powerful veteran smirks out of the corner of his mouth and decides to drop his strongest attack to truly challenge the young hero's skills. Crowley releases a colossal column of smoke and green magic, startling the school principal with the sudden intensity of his full power. Elder Crowley starts breaking into a cold sweat as he realizes he made a terrible miscalculation regarding the kid's testing booth. The principal asks with concern if the elder is okay, and if the effort to summon so many monsters ended up draining his magic energy. The veteran clarifies that he could summon thousands of soldiers without the slightest effort, leaving the principal confused about the actual problem. The elder confesses that he got too carried away with Pluto's talent and ended up sending an excessive horde of monsters to his room. The master fears that the young innovator might be in serious danger due to the absurd number of enemies that popped up. Pluto finds himself surrounded by a literal crowd of bronze warriors and wonders if the elder is trying to take him out on purpose. Despite the scare, the young man decides to stop playing around with physical combat and ready his most destructive weapons to clear the room. The MC snaps his fingers confidently to activate his feared technique of creating explosive undead soldiers once again. A horde of gunpowder skeletons with flaming heads and loaded barrels emerges on the field, ready to carry out the young man's orders. The undead run in a straight line in a determined manner, carrying the powerful bombs directly toward the enemy army. With a ruthless glare of an iron-willed warrior, Pluto coldly commands his explosive troops to reduce everything to pure dust. The charge of the living bomb startles the bronze soldiers, who find themselves cornered in the face of such imminent destruction in the booth. The principal panics upon seeing the boys score and begs the elder to deactivate the summons immediately. The elite teacher stares at the overall leaderboard panel with an expression of complete surprise and lack of understanding. Suddenly, the woman reaches out dramatically toward the screen and yells for the principal to hold on a moment before acting. The man snaps back, annoyed that waiting even a single minute more could cause the young talent to be completely torn apart. However, the teacher makes a firm gesture with her hand, indicating that the principal needs to pay attention to what is happening on the screen. Pluto's points on the chart begin to skyrocket in an absurd way, jumping from 200 to nearly 300 points in just a few moments. The panel logs the historic mark of 350 points shockingly fast, surpassing all expectations. The principal is left completely wide-eyed and breaking into a cold sweat, questioning if the person in that room is really the C-class student. The veteran Crowley reflects in awe that the potential shown by the boy is enough to save the entire nation in the near future. Even though the principal still wants to stop it, the elder insists on keeping the test going to find the true limits of the young prodigy. In the testing room, a titanic blast of fire and smoke consumes the living statues, boosting the young man's score to 800 points. Multiple consecutive explosions sweep the rest of the bronze opponents, making Pluto reach the incredible mark of 900 points. The dust finally settles on the devastated scene, revealing dozens of completely destroyed bronze statues on the booth floor. Pluto walks calmly through the field of debris and notices that a few survivors still remain amidst the dust. He points his epic staff forward and orders his undead soldiers to quickly eliminate the last remaining statues. Upon reaching the impressive mark of 1,000 points, the young man admits with disdain that his testing room ended up turning into a war zone. In the control booth, the elite teacher sighs in relief as she sees that the flood of points on the screen has finally stopped climbing. Elder Crowley smiles impressed, noting that the young prodigy managed to exterminate absolutely every single statue sent his way. The principal celebrates the unbelievable victory and asks if he should bring the boy to the master's presence immediately after the exams. However, the powerful mage denies the principal's request with an extremely serious and focused expression of someone who has made a big decision. He surprises everyone by stating with conviction that he will make it a point to personally go meet the young prodigy in his testing room. The principal warns with concern that the academy exams aren't over yet, but the elder simply ignores the warning and activates his portal. The master explains that his physical movement will not affect the progress of the tests in the other students' individual booths at all. He reflects in awe that the boy holds immeasurable potential if that absurd score is truly legitimate. Eager to uncover the secret behind the young man's power, the elder disappears into the green teleportation portal in the blink of an eye. In his room, Pluto rests his staff on the stone floor and takes a deep breath, relieved to have finally finished the tiring slaughter. He admits that facing hundreds of bronze statues would be terrible if he couldn't spam his explosive gunpowder summons. Suddenly, the young man notices a green magic shift and readies himself for combat, thinking the elder sent new monsters into the room. However, Pluto is intrigued to notice that only a single human silhouette is emerging from the glowing summoning portal. Without hesitation, the youth commands his skeleton troops to surround the mysterious intruder before he can even manage to formulate a reaction. The undead warriors rush forward at high speed, wielding their sharp swords straight toward the veteran master. However, Crowley simply commands them to hold and releases a wave of energy that freezes the skeletons just inches from his face. The elder calmly observes the creatures frozen mid-air and immediately recognizes them as legendary undead soldiers. Pluto lowers his weapon in surprise upon recognizing the veteran master and politely asks what would bring a legend like him to his booth. The elder comments that only C-rank necromancers hold this summoning skill, and the MC confirms that that is indeed his class. Elder Crowley glares into the young man's eyes in an intimidating way and reminds him that necromancers suffer from a strict limit of one summon. He notes seriously that the exam has barely started, and the young man begins breaking into a cold sweat as he realizes his secret is about to be exposed. The master rests his hands on his staff in an imposing manner and demands to know how the C-rank kid managed to summon so many soldiers all at. Once Pluto begins sweating out of pure nervousness as he realizes he was completely found out by the master and questions if he should reveal the whole truth. The elder warns that he won't force an answer, but demands to know only if that colossal power is truly controlled and if it will serve to defend the country. The young man reflects that his greatest wish in this second life is to protect his homeland, and for that, he urgently needs the backing of the elite guildmaster. He decides he can't reveal all his cards at once, opting to show just enough to win the veteran's trust. The young hero points his glowing purple energy staff and begins the summoning ritual right before the watchful eyes of the Elder Master Pluto pretends to play by the textbook rules, faking that his regular summons suffer from the standard cooldown of 30 minutes per creature. He also mentions with false modesty that his bone creatures have a maximum duration of only a single hour of active combat. However, with a mysterious slight smirk, he reveals quietly that none of those ridiculous limitations apply to his true power. The boy snaps his fingers and shows in a high-impact way that his undead summons are completely free of any magic restrictions. Elder Crowley is left completely horrified and textless upon seeing that the boy commands fully unlimited necromancy. The veteran closes his eyes for a brief moment, trying to process and digest the sheer scale of the danger and grandeur of that absolute power. The elder concludes in shock that Pluto commands an untiring legion of the undead all by himself, and the youth confirms that this is theoretically true. The master reflects in awe that the young man is not just a promising rookie, but a living legend who stands on a completely superior level. Delighted, Crowley assures him that he will do everything to back him up and lets him know he will personally speak with the guild president to secure a bright future. The veteran says goodbye with enthusiasm as he activates his return portal, leaving the MC in shock to learn that the guild president will be involved. Pluto notices a strange glitch in Crowley's teleport light and wonders if a flaw occurred in the veteran master's magic. Before crossing the glowing portal, the elder reaches out his arm in a friendly way and offers a mysterious golden key as a welcome gift. The young man stares at the small glowing object with curiosity, trying to decode the true value of that mysterious elite gift. The master casually asks if the young warrior has ever heard of the legendary Blessing Rift in his Academy Theory classes. The boy quickly nods his head, remembering studying about the fantastic properties of that special dungeon. This dungeon scales to the warrior's level, features random monsters, and offers a ton of experience and valuable gear as a reward. However, the only way to get in is by using a rare key that has a drop rate that is almost impossible to pull from regular dungeons. Pluto is left extremely skeptical and wide-eyed as he realizes the priceless value of the gift he is about to receive for free. The elder looks at the boy with pride, determined to give a little push to the leveling of that youth who promises to revolutionize the whole country. The golden key that opens the special grinding portal is finally handed over, leaving the MC with a brilliant advantage to power level. The veteran master disappears into the green portal in the blink of an eye, leaving the young man alone with his valuable prize of gleaming gold, with his eyes glowing a mysterious shade of purple. Pluto tucks away the prize and plans to enter the rift as soon as the exam wraps up for good. The principal announces over the mic that the 30-minute time limit is up and officially declares the end of the first major exam. In the testing booth, the arrogant Adrian drops to his knees exhausted, leaning on his sword as he pants from tiredness after the fierce battle from earlier. Looking at the broken pieces of bronze around him, he proudly celebrates the absurd number of enemies he managed to eliminate. The villain smirks with malice and brags about defeating over 40 monsters, certain that he will conquer the absolute top of the entire school. The announcer orders through the sound system for all students to step out of their testing booths and gather in the main courtyard to view the final scoreboard. The crowd of tired students packs onto the academy's massive lawn, anxious and loud to find out the overall scores. Many youths complain about the test's insane difficulty, commenting with frustration that they barely managed to eliminate 10 monsters in half an hour of battle. Adrian squeezes through the loud crowd with his arms crossed, actively looking for the young man to start up the mean jokes. The students begin pointing and whispering in Pluto's direction, who walks calmly through the courtyard with his hands in his pockets, and without a single scratch, Adrian steps forward decisively and with fast paces toward the MC, flashing a sadistic and repulsive smirk of someone who thinks they've already won. The bully rudely grabs the collar of Pluto's suit jacket, mocking his presence there and challenging his courage in an extremely bold way. The young man just tightly holds the golden key hidden inside his closed hand. Keeping an enviable calm in the face of the unprovoked aggression, Adrian asks with a sneer if the boy is already properly prepared to start crawling and barking on the ground in front of the whole school. He keeps laughing out loud and maliciously states that he can't wait to see the former C-class prodigy humiliated on his knees on the grass. The principal calls for total silence from the restless crowd, announcing that he will begin the official reveal of the test's top 5 students. The master notes that he will only reveal the elite top 5 and that the rest of the students should fetch their results from their own teachers. He declares that 5th place went to a score of 39 points, leaving the crowd shocked by the absurdly high score of the best. The bully victoriously whispers in Pluto's ear that his score was way higher than that. While the hero thinks his own score is overkill, Adrian proudly celebrates as he is announced in 4th place with 41 points, immediately demanding that the MC start barking. The villain cracks up, laughing upon hearing that 3rd place went to the S-rank prodigy Luna, who reached an incredible 77 points. The girl cheers happily with her arms raised under the crowd's applause, surprised to have hit such a brilliant mark in the exam. 2nd place is announced with 95 points, and the S-rank competitor gets furious for missing out on the 1st place ranking. The principal takes a deep breath before the mic, gearing up to announce the grand champion who hit a legendary and unprecedented mark in the school. Julian Kingsley yells into the mic that 1st place goes to Pluto with an unbelievable score of 1,000 points. A deafening silence takes over the entire courtyard as the students try to process what they just heard. The crowd quickly falls into complete despair since the Academy's previous record was a measly 97 points. Adrian and Luna are left shocked by Pluto's surreal result, given he was supposed to be just a low-level C-class awaken. The 2nd place S-ranker does the math in fear and realizes that Pluto would need to defeat over 30 monsters per minute. Adrian goes completely pale and starts breaking into a cold sweat, unable to comprehend how that would even be possible. The villain simply cannot accept that he was surpassed in such a humiliating way by a mere necromant. The heir to the Blackwood family grabs Pluto's clothes, shaking with pure rage and outrage. Pluto looks down on his rival with total disdain and calmly lets him know that he just lost the bet. Adrian backs away, yelling that his rival cheated somehow, while Pluto asks if he's going to chicken out. The other students start laughing and gossiping about the barking bet that the arrogant Adrian now has to pay up, humiliated in front of everyone. The green-haired boy takes a step back. On the verge of exploding with fury, Adrian drops to the ground and screams in despair, saying it's impossible for a C-rank necromant to get that score. The students start mocking him, telling him not to be a sore loser and to just fulfill the bet already. On the main stage, the principal announces that the grand winner will receive epic gear provided by the Blue Dragon Guild. Pluto is called to the stage and tells Adrian he won't waste time on trash before telling his rival to get out of his sight. While some students think Pluto was too nice, Adrian vows from the ground that he will surpass the MC no matter what, consumed by pure hatred. The villain rants that he will make Pluto suffer 100 times worse and that he's still going to finish him. Pluto keeps walking calmly, but feels a dark presence emanating right from behind his back. A ghostly purple skull-shaped aura floats around the young man, revealing his terrifying hidden power. Adrian feels an overwhelming pressure and falls down, screaming in pain from the impact of that malicious energy. Pluto glances back with a cold, indifferent look, not caring at all about his rival's tantrum. Under the watchful eyes of the entire school, the young necromant calmly walks up the stairs toward the podium. The Academy principal warmly congratulates Pluto on the historic performance that shocked everyone. The man explains that the prestigious Blue Dragon Guild prepared 3 gear options for the champion to choose from. Since the boys' class was still listed as undetermined, he was authorized to pick whichever item he preferred. Pluto observes the 3 glowing items in front of him and begins analyzing which one will bring the most advantages. He notes that the heavy armor and the longsword are great for warriors, but completely useless for his class. With not many interesting alternatives, he reaches out to choose the dark cloak that increases his mana. Upon equipping the Moonveil cloak, he gains 50 mana points, which allows him to summon 50 more undead soldiers. The principal raises Pluto's hand and officially declares him the grand champion of the Academy's freshman test. The students start chanting the young man's name in unison, instantly turning him into the campus's newest legend. Pluto flashes a slight smirk upon realizing his plan to stand out worked out perfectly. The principal lets everyone know that the next major guild trial will be in 1 month and encourages everyone to level up as much as possible. Later, the scenes shift to the slums where the humble apartment currently housing the MC is located. Now in his room, Pluto closely observes the golden key he received as a gift from the influential master, Crowley. Following the textbook instructions, the young man begins channeling his mana straight into the golden item. A purple energy portal begins to open in the middle of the room, with magic sparks glowing everywhere. The youth notices with fascination that the legendary rift can truly be opened in absolutely any location. He recalls Elder Crowley's advice about the importance of having a trusted healer in the dungeon party. The young man mentally apologizes to the veteran master, knowing full well he is not going to follow that advice. Pluto decides it's much better to do everything solo and steps fearlessly into the mysterious training portal. The magic light consumes the young man's body and instantly teleports him inside the rift dungeon. Upon arriving on the other side, the young warrior is faced with a completely unknown, mountainous and rocky landscape. Fast monsters called Level 9, blade-tailed leopards begin to surround the young man stealthily. Pluto knows these beasts strike fast and that the best strategy is simply not to let them get close. He quickly summons his undead soldiers and orders them to create an impenetrable barrier around him. The bone warriors form a perfect, unbreakable shield wall to protect their master from any charge. The beasts try to attack but are easily sliced down by the skeletons, yielding a massive amount of experience points. Pluto is shocked by the ease and realizes he's going to level up way before he even encounters the dungeon boss. Pluto celebrates clearing the entryway monsters and decides it's finally time to explore deeper into the dungeon. He realizes that keeping his soldiers purely on defense consumes too much attack power, and that he needs to fix his vulnerability soon. Suddenly, one of the fast leopards leaps at high speed, landing a direct blow against a skeleton's chest. But the bone creature reacts in time and decapitates the wild beast, securing another 300 experience points for the boy. Pluto glows intensely as he hits level 10, proudly reaching the double-digit mark for the first time. The system issues an alert informing that the young necromant has just unlocked a new skill called Death Gaze. The technique summons the Eye of the Dead, which paralyzes any enemy with fear if they make direct eye contact with the summon. The young man deduces that the paralysis duration depends on the level gap between him and the opponent, making the move totally broken. However, he remembers that ordinary people consider this skill useless because of its long 24-hour cooldown. But Pluto smiles, remembering that his system removes all restrictions, allowing him to use this creepy gaze endlessly. The silence of the area is broken by the violent crash of sharp claws brutally colliding against a metal shield. Out of the shadows emerges the terrifying blade-tailed Leopard King, roaring loudly and threatening the MC's entire backline. Pluto widens his eyes, surprised to run smack into the grand dungeon boss way sooner than he himself expected. The young man quickly orders his army to surround the colossal beast to finish it off once and for all. With terrifying agility, the giant monster leaps and shreds the skeleton's defenses with its sharp claws. The bone warriors are tossed far away and sliced in half by the leopard boss's incredible speed. Pluto realizes the king's speed is absurd, as he managed to break the formation before the perimeter could even close. The youth fears that all his troops will be wiped out before they can even manage to land a single blow on the creature. Seeing that things have gotten dangerous, the young man decides to take control of the situation and wields his staff in an imposing manner. He begins channeling his magic energy, causing a sinister red smoke to start covering the entire ground. A massive scarlet rift opens in the dungeon skies, revealing the birth of a terrifying crowd control magic. Pluto gears up to test the fearsome Death Gaze in real combat, using the Leopard King as his first guinea pig. The youth shouts to draw the beast's attention and make it look straight up in his direction. The giant monster takes the bait and turns its face, staring fixedly at the mysterious red glow emanating from the sky. The Leopard King tries to roar in fury, but is suddenly paralyzed by the overwhelming power of the eye curse. Seeing the beast completely motionless and defenseless, Pluto gives a sadistic smile, knowing that victory is already locked in. The giant Eye of the Dead emits a bright light that consumes all of the powerful monster's willpower. Completely dominated by the fear status, the leopard shakes in terror, unable to move a single muscle in its body. Pluto calculates that since the boss's level is lower than his, the paralyzing effect should last at least 5 seconds. Wasting no time, he summons his gunpowder skeletons and plans to simply summon another eye as soon as the effect wears off. A horde of undead carrying highly explosive barrels emerges behind the young man's back, ready to run with a cold, merciless look. Pluto points at the defenseless opponent and orders the immediate advance of his bomb troops. The skeletons crash into the Leopard King, triggering a spectacular sequence of massive fire explosions. The monster roars in pure pain as the flames devour its body, without him being able to even try to escape from there. The fear effect finally ends, but another bomb explodes right in its face, blocking any chance of a reaction. Pluto extends his staff again, activating the restriction removal to restart the boss's nightmare. While the enemy is bombarded non-stop, the youth conjures Death Gaze once more to keep it paralyzed. The massive red eye reappears in the skies, sealing the beast's fate for good with another round of absolute panic. The consecutive explosions sweep the scene, kicking up a massive column of smoke and destroying everything around. The giant monster finally falls lifeless, yielding 30,000 experience points all at once for the youth. Pluto is shocked to jump 2 levels in a single dungeon, something that would be impossible to achieve in normal rifts. The young man recalls that upon hitting level 10, he received another limitation removal that ended up being interrupted by the boss. The new passive removes the physical form lock, allowing him to transform into a spectral mist, immune to any attack. Upon reading that he will be totally immune to physical and magic damage, the boy realizes he gained the ultimate survival skill. Since the spirit form consumes a lot of magic energy, he concludes he will need to drastically increase his mana points. Suddenly, the MC notices a golden glow gleaming intensely in the middle of the smoke left by the defeated boss. Pluto stares at the strong golden light with curiosity and wonders if he already hit the jackpot of pulling a legendary item. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the luxurious Blackwood family mansion, where the vibe seems extremely tense sitting on a red couch. The arrogant Adrian drinks wine while cursing his rival's name with a lot of bitterness. The villain recalls that dark and intimidating glare from Pluto, shaking with hatred as he realizes he is scared out of his mind of him. Adrian grinds his teeth in pure rage as he remembers how he was completely humiliated by Pluto in front of the whole school, losing control. He squeezes the glass cup in his hand until it bursts into several pieces. Ignoring the cut and the blood dripping down, the mansion's butler asks with concern if the injury is okay, but the villain only demands that they clean everything up fast because a visitor is arriving. While they clean up the mess, Adrian vows mentally that Pluto will learn a painful lesson for daring to cross his path. Right then, one of his servants enters the grand hall. Announcing that the mysterious guest has finally arrived for the meeting, Adrian rudely orders all staff to leave the room immediately, receiving a startled apology from the butler. He commands them to bring the guest inside, and then leave them completely alone to handle shady business. A mysterious man wearing a dark blue cloak and carrying a massive glowing bow on his back enters the luxurious venue. The servants whisper, startled, wondering how the young master got involved with someone who exudes such dangerous energy. The older butler responds seriously that calling that man dangerous would be a massive understatement. He reveals that the marksman has already completed 33 hit contracts, and rumors say he can eliminate targets from miles away. The feared A-rank sniper is named Cedric Thornhill, and he coldly warns that he charges double if the target is a woman or a child. Adrian laughs with disdain and assures him that his target is a man. Leaving the assassin a bit bored by the lack of challenge, Cedric plops down comfortably on the leather couch and casually asks if the target is at least some professional warrior. The Blackwood heir is startled by the sniper's sharp intuition and asks confusedly how he managed to guess that so easily. The mercenary gives a sarcastic smirk and replies that it's obvious since Adrian himself is also a high-level warrior. The marksman notes that the client is an A rank and wonders if the mysterious target might be a powerful S rank, awakened to need backup. Adrian gets visibly awkward and reveals rather clumsily that the opponent's class is actually just a necromant. Cedric widens his eyes, outraged, and questions if the target is really from that trash class that takes 30 minutes to summon a single skeleton. The green-haired boy confirms with an awkward smile, while a suppressed chuckle begins to echo through the hall. Cedric can't hold it in and starts laughing out loud at the young noble's face, leaving him extremely embarrassed. He mocks him, saying, "This is the best joke of the year. Given an A-rank warrior is hiring a professional assassin over a C-rank annoyed." Adrian yells that Pluto is no ordinary necromancer because he leveled up way too fast and has already been marked by the Blue Dragon Guild. Upon hearing the name of the most powerful guild in the country, the elite sniper immediately turns serious and admits that this complicates things. Adrian swallows hard out of pure nervousness, fearing the mercenary might back out of the contract due to the elite guild's involvement. However, the assassin flashes a massive grin and shouts greedily that with this high risk, the job price just went up. Relieved by the response, the Blackwood heir sighs slightly and assures him that money is no issue for his wealthy family. Cedric is satisfied and asks only for a photo with basic info to start tracking the boy's trail immediately. With a bizarre and totally sadistic expression, the elite assassin vows that he will take the MC's life without leaving a trace. Adrian smirks with malice and lets him know that as the boy's classmate, he knows exactly Pluto's humble home address. The assassin comments that this will make the job much easier, while the boy severely warns him not to make any silly mistakes. Cedric turns with a glance flashing an extremely murderous and intimidating aura. Asking if the client is seriously doubting his work, Adrian falls into total panic under that crushing pressure and apologizes, stuttering that it was just a friendly reminder. The marksman says goodbye, saying he doesn't need advice coming from a piece of trash unable to handle a simple C-rank opponent. Alone again, the young noble grinds his teeth in anger upon realizing he was just humiliated and looked down on by yet another person. However, he tries to calm down and relaxes on the red couch, consoling himself with the idea that his rival will soon be gone anyway. Overcome by madness, he rants that he doesn't care about the consequences as long as he can see his rival's corpse lying on the ground. While the villain yells the MC's name in his mansion, a purple teleport lightning bolt begins to form in the humble bedroom. It turns out to be the legendary item dropped by the leopard boss called Void Slicer, which grants 50 agility to whoever equips it. Pluto analyzes the item and realizes that despite the incredible stats, it is a weapon for assassins, but decides to keep it to sell for a fortune. He reflects gratefully on the rift that made him jump 2 levels at once and feels highly indebted to the generous Master Crowley for that key. The youth decides it's time to head back home to rest. Since tomorrow he has a very important meeting with the guild veteran, he crosses the return dimensional rift while the purple energy whirlpool begins to disappear in the middle of the scene. The young man's feet softly touch the ceramic tile floor of his small tenement room, wrapping up the return trip. Looking around, the necromante reflects that his humble room now feels like a literal tight cage compared to the rift. Suddenly, the glass window of his apartment is violently shattered by the blast of a mysterious projectile. A powerful blue energy arrow pierces straight through the young man's chest in an extremely lethal surprise attack. With the absurd force of the impact, the hero's body is violently thrown against the cold floor of his room. On top of a neighboring building, Cedric lowers his glowing blue magic bow and whispers victoriously that the target has been successfully eliminated. Meanwhile, in the office of the Blue Dragon Guild president, the leader questions in surprise about the rookie's 200 talent points. Crowley explains to the president that Pluto has immeasurable potential for vastly breaking the old record of 120 points. The guild president comments that the boy with 200 talent points could become the nation's greatest secret weapon. Curious about the new prodigy's abilities, he asks in a focused manner what the boy's magic class might be. Crowley responds seriously with his hands resting on his wooden staff that the youth awakened as a necromancer. The leader of the Blue Dragon Guild falls into complete silence at the unexpected answer regarding the boy's class. The president recalls that the power ceiling for a C-rank class is very low, no matter how talented the user appears to be. However, the experienced master counters saying that is exactly the point, because the boy managed to break the system's strict rules. With a firm and focused look, the veteran gears up to reveal the largest and highest impact discovery about the hero. The veteran reveals dramatically that Pluto somehow pulled off the legendary feat of unlimited summoning. The president is startled to realize that if the boy has enough mana energy, he could command an infinite army all by himself. The leader questions if the boy's strength doesn't come from some legendary item, but Crowley assures him the youth used just a regular staff. Fascinated by the prodigy who challenged the laws of the class system, the boss demands an immediate meeting with the young necromant. In a rush to recruit the boy before other factions do, the leader asks with urgency where he is located right now. Crowley explains that he gifted him the golden key and that right now he must be training in the secret monster rift. The leader warns that nobody can help him in there, but the elder reassures him, saying he sent the boy accompanied by a support. The veteran reflects proudly that with the boy's power, the presence of any basic healer would be enough to protect him. The president observes the city, thinking the boundless young necromant might be the only key to the country's salvation in the next war. Back in the city, Cedric's blue magic arrow travels at high speed, cutting through the wind toward the hero's apartment. The projectile pierces the glass window, generating a violent crash that breaks the night silence in the slums. The energy arrow hits the young necromant dead on in a cruel attempt at an instant assassination. On the neighboring roof, the mercenary celebrates the boy's end and only regrets not arriving in time to steal the golden key. With a sadistic and repulsive look, the sniper decides to wait around to amuse himself with the suffering of the hero's allies. But while he watches the room, a purple energy portal begins to suddenly open right behind the fallen body of the youth. A purple electric whirlpool expands across the floor, revealing that the rift teleport was just activated again. The assassin watches confused as the passageway closes and starts breaking into a cold sweat upon realizing nobody came out of the dimensional portal. The mercenary glares at the boy's silhouette through the broken window and is startled to realize he went in solo and came back in one piece. Pluto wipes the sweat from his face and admits to himself that by a very narrow margin, that mysterious arrow didn't take his life. He explains that if he hadn't unlocked his new spectral form, he would have been reduced to a corpse on the bedroom floor. The boy complains annoyed for being greeted with an arrow to the back, right after wrapping up a tiring training session in the rift. Overcome by fury, the hero activates his feared death gaze to locate and punish the coward who tried to assassinate him. From the top of the building, the sniper spots the massive scarlet eye in the skies and stutters, unable to accept that his perfect shot failed. The marksman tries to run, but falls into complete despair upon realizing his body is totally paralyzed by the fear status. Cedric tries to calm down, remembering they are separated by miles and that the opponent won't manage to reach him in time. He plans to just tough out the duration of the paralysis to then use his multiple arrows and finalize the job for good. The mercenary concentrates on resisting while glaring at the young necromancer's silhouette standing at the shattered window of the apartment. Pluto confesses that his initial idea was to play dead to lure the rival out, but he didn't expect the assassin to be so cautious. But with a slight smile, the hero comments that he always has a backup plan and summons a bone warrior right behind the enemy. Cedric widens his eyes, completely missing how an undead soldier managed to pop up on his roof while being so far from the summoner. Without hesitation, the bone creature advances ruthlessly and pierces the sniper's chest with its sharp sword in a brutal strike. The panic effect ends, and the assassin uses his strength to shatter the creature that attacked him from behind. The mercenary spits blood and brags about his level 18 rank, claiming a single weak skeleton could never defeat him. Free from the paralysis, he readies his glowing bow to fill the young necromante's body with arrows once and for all, paral antes de puxar a corda. O mercenário congela de pavor ao avistar outra fenda de energia vermelha se formando no céu. He yells outraged upon seeing Death Gaze being conjured instantly for the second consecutive time right before him. The marksman convinces himself that the class cooldown time will save him, ignoring that the regular rules do not apply to the boy. From the apartment, Pluto notes that the mercenary's defense is too high to be destroyed by just one basic bone warrior. But with a cold and focused look, he remembers that the number of summons has never been an issue for his power. The youth snaps his fingers and kicks off mass conjuring, summoning dozens of undead soldiers directly onto the enemy roof. Cedric begins sweating out of pure desperation upon seeing a literal legion of bone warriors emerge around him out of nowhere. Cornered, the sniper grinds his teeth in hatred, realizing Pluto's power is no C rank and rants that damned Adrian lied to him. With a confident gesture, Pluto commands his dozens of undead soldiers to go on the attack. The little skeleton creatures leap from the roof toward the neighboring building, making a sinister noise in the dead of night. Paralelas escalam as paredes verticais de concreto, de forma assustadoramente ágil e implacável para caçar o alvo. The bone monsters smash the windows and rush up the floors at high speed in search of the coward marksman. Cedric finds himself completely cornered on the roof of the tall building, surrounded by an endless horde of enemies. The skeleton soldiers advance through the air, brandishing their swords ready to slice up the unprotected mercenary. Pluto watches the attack from below, only regretting that his necromancy class doesn't hold the ability to fly. Yet desperate, Cedric begs the undead for his life, demanding to speak directly with their master to negotiate. He tries to argue that he can still be very useful, but is cut short by the sudden presence of the youth on the roof. Pluto appears calmly on the terrace flanked by his troops and asks with disdain what the marksman has that is so interesting. The mercenary humbles himself on his knees, assuring he will reveal the identity of the client if the hero spares his life. Pluto reveals with his eyes glowing purple that he already knows the mastermind was Adrian Blackwood and that he will handle this personally. Cedric falls into complete shock and yells desperate. Not understanding how the boy managed to find that out so fast, the marksman offers to assassinate 3 people for free, but Pluto counters that a hitman must always be ready to fall. The black-haired youth coldly admits that the mercenary will indeed be very useful to him in a very specific way. However, he wraps up saying that the elite sniper's usefulness will only truly begin after he is gone. With a cold, ruthless gesture, the MC orders his bone troops to execute the mercenary right then and there. The assassin cries for mercy, trying to back away, but the sharp blades of the undead are already too close to his body. A skeleton raises its weapon and delivers a fatal blow, finishing the fight and taking the life of the feared A-rank mercenary under the rival's final cry of agony. The MC remains standing still, with a few splashes of blood covering his face. Pluto coldly observes the corpse lying on the terrace floor, preparing to kick off his true and macabre technique. He drops to his knees exhausted, leaning his staff on the concrete floor due to the massive physical and mental effort of that battle. Despite the extreme tiredness, the young necromant flashes a victorious look for finally completing his main objective. He notices his mana dropped to just 15 points after consecutively using Death Gaze and his defensive spectral form. The boy recalls he used the 16-foot summoning range to secretly place a skeleton outside the apartment. That bone creature received the express order to locate and ambush the elite sniper while he was focused on the attack. At the same time, the MC used himself as perfect bait to draw all the attention and greed of the dangerous assassin. He leans his body on the staff and admits that running out of magic energy is one of the most unpleasant feelings he has ever felt. Pluto approaches the body and acknowledges that Cedric's ability to fire with precision from miles away was truly formidable. He channels his last points of energy, hoping the ritual he is about to perform won't completely empty his mana. A purple sorcery circle surrounds Cedric's corpse, kicking off the forced soul extraction of the deceased elite sniper. Thanks to the evolution lock removal, the youth can command a skeleton to absorb the opponent's soul and evolve permanently. The boy holds in his hand the glowing purple spiritual essence containing all the power and combat memories of the mercenary. Pluto orders the deceased marksman's soul to be injected directly into one of his trusted skeleton warriors. A colossal blast of purple energy consumes the skeleton's body, activating the legendary process of permanent evolution. Whirlpools of smoke and magic sparks cover the creature's entire silhouette, while its physical structure is fully remodeled. An imposing skeleton figure with hunter attire begins to emerge from the middle of the purple magic storm on the terrace. The system confirms the full evolution, revealing the creation of the new and powerful A-rank Spell Eye Sniper Soldier. The new summon holds enhanced vision from miles away, dynamic weakness tracking, and creates magic arrows with double damage. Pluto smiles satisfied upon seeing that the new creature holds the capacity to level up along with him automatically. However, a red alert warns that the evolution is still incomplete and that the soldier won't be able to fight until the process finishes. The young necromanta stares at the bone creature confused and wonders what could be missing to wrap up the transformation. The boy puts his hand to his chin thoughtfully, trying to unlock what ingredient is missing to unleash the warrior's power. Suddenly, a brilliant idea pops into his mind as he looks at the scene around the building's terrace. Pluto spots the massive shiny blue bow thrown on the ground and wonders if the item would be the missing piece for the skeleton. He picks up the epic quality mana-forged bow that belonged to the deceased mercenary, and that grants 50 mana. The youth gives a slight smirk, finding plain the simple effect of the bow that just increases the mana points of whoever uses it. He extends the epic bow toward his new skeleton soldier to test if the weapon was truly the missing ingredient. As soon as it receives the bow, the creature roars loudly, while the system officially confirms the full evolution of his new monster. Pluto deduces that it makes total sense for the weapon to be required. Since even an undead couldn't wage war without the proper gear, Pluto hands over the energy bow and notes that the warrior will use that temporarily until he scores better gear. The undead soldier bows loyally and immediately accepts the orders of his beloved Supreme Master. Pluto stands totally perplexed and jaw-dropped upon realizing that his evolved soldier now holds the ability to speak. The bone creature politely confirms with a nod that indeed it can now communicate in a fully conscious manner. The new marksman kneels respectfully and reveals that he would like to make a small and important request to his master. He humbly asks that Pluto grant him a proper name to seal his new identity for good. The young shadow mage stares at his servant thoughtfully, mentally repeating the request about choosing a worthy name. He agrees that keeping on calling his new soldier Spell Eye Sniper all the time would be very clumsy. The hero reflects that as his first permanently evolved creature, the choice requires a lot of seriousness and care. Pluto closes his eyes for a brief moment, trying to search his mind for some inspiration from his past. He then recalls his previous life on Earth, where he worked in a metropolis destroyed by the terrible war. The boy remembers an experienced and fearless sniper who operated in the trenches amidst the chaos of combat. In the memory, the young recruit asks if that heavy rifle would truly be capable of eliminating the feared enemy leader. Another war veteran approaches laughing and questions if the young recruit has any clue who that legendary sniper is. The soldier explains with admiration that that man is a true living legend who eliminated the enemy general from miles away. He reveals proudly that opponents on the battlefield know the marksman by the feared nickname of Distant Reaper. Through the lens of the scope, the sniper coldly observes the movements of the enemy general surrounded by guards. The cruel enemy leader yells furious, ordering his troops to execute mercilessly all survivors of that nation. Keeping total calm, the legendary sniper calmly positions his finger on the trigger of his heavy precision weapon. A deafening blast echoes through the destroyed metropolis at the moment the lethal shot is finally made. The projectile travels at supersonic speed, cutting through the air in a straight line directly toward the general's skull. The bullet hits the cruel leader right in the head, generating a blast of scarlet blood and putting an end to the rival's tyranny. The surviving guards fall into complete panic, yelling for everyone to seek cover immediately. The young recruit stands wide-eyed at the precision of the shot made from miles away and congratulates the war veteran. The legendary soldier just lowers his heavy weapon, keeping the same cold and indifferent expression as always. The youth enthusiastically asks the veteran to teach him the secrets of long-range aiming and asks what his name is. The man gives a slight smirk and simply replies that his call sign in the trenches is Archer. Back to present reality, Pluto stares at his new skeleton with a determined face upon making his final decision. The MC points to the bone soldier and solemnly declares that from that moment on, his name shall be Archer. The skeleton with glowing eyes accepts the name with pride, promising to faithfully serve his master until the end of his days. The hero orders the return of the summon, and Archer dissolves into a purple magic smoke to rest inside the system. A system screen notes that the youth has now filled one of the 5 available slots for evolved creatures. Pluto realizes that with few evolution slots, each future soul choice will need to be extremely strategic. He breathes a sigh of relief for not wasting that valuable skill on regular low-level dungeon monsters. Suddenly, a bright blue magic portal pops up on the roof, startling the boy who thinks it might be new assassins. However, the youth notes that the magic energy is identical to the teleport portal used in the academy test. To the boy's surprise, Elder Crowley emerges from the portal, letting him know that the president sent him out of concern for his safety. However, as soon as the veteran master steps out of the portal, he freezes in shock, looking at the concrete floor of the venue. The old mage glares at the trail of destruction and the blood spilled across the terrace, asking shocked what on earth happened there, while the wind blows in the night darkness. The hero gears up to explain the entire situation to his powerful protector. The veteran repeats incredulous the story about the young necromante being ambuscado by an assassin. Right after exiting the rift, Pluto breaks into a cold sweat, remembering that if he took a second longer to recall Archer, his evolution secret would be discovered. Crowley asks where the youth's support partner is, and Pluto begins stuttering awkwardly without knowing how to answer. The veteran master glares at the boy in an extremely serious and focused manner upon noticing the young hero's lie. The elder sighs, annoyed, and questions if the boy in fact ignored all his warnings to enter the dungeon solo. The master notes that his loss would be an irreparable loss for the nation, but Pluto arrogantly assures that regular rifts are a breeze. The elder reflects surprised that reckless arrogance of the boy is identical to the president's personality in his youth. The hero switches topics and asks why the veteran master decided to visit him in the middle of the night. Instead of waiting for the next morning, Crowley explains that the president found the situation critical and ordered him to escort him to the guild headquarters immediately. The elder notes that the leader is already waiting for them and begins guiding the boy toward the blue teleport portal. Crowley assures that the guild's intelligence sector will handle cleaning the scene and will deliver a full report on the sniper. Pluto gets curious and asks the Elder Master why they aren't going to use the teleport portal to go faster. The veteran clarifies that he does not hold a spatial-type class, and therefore cannot create magic circles at his own will. He reveals that the previous portals were pre-made by professionals and that he just holds the access rights to activate them. The Elder denies with a shake of his head, revealing that this time he engraved the teleport circle directly into the fabric of the hero's new cloak. Pluto jumps back, startled, and questions incredulous how the master managed to do that without him even noticing. Crowley asks for calm, explaining that it was just a disposable magic mark that has already fully dissipated after the first use. The mysterious purple seal glows for the last time before vanishing entirely without leaving any trace on the hero's cloak. A luxurious, dark limousine comes honking down the street and parks right in front of the two mages to pick them up. Two drivers wearing green athletic suits bow politely, announcing that the guild transport has arrived. Crowley orders the subordinates to clean the assassin's body on the terrace and deliver the ID report as fast as possible. Pluto observes the respect of the servants and deduces that the men in green uniforms belong to the logistics support staff of the Grand Guild. The veteran invites the boy to get in the car, warning them not to keep the guild president waiting any longer. The luxurious limousine starts up and accelerates quickly, cutting through the dark city streets toward the Grand headquarters. The support staff talk with envy, commenting on the privilege it is to be personally escorted by the vice president. One of the drivers reveals quietly to his partner that he used a secret data tracking technique to check out the boy. He reports thinking he would see a legendary S-rank warrior, but stands confused to note that his class was a C-class necromant. The colleague widens his eyes, incredulous, pondering that even the guild's cleaning staff requires a minimum rank of B rank. He deduces, startled, that the only viable explanation is that the kid detected his scan and faked his own data on the spot. The other driver stutters surprised because he knows that data sweep technique is so advanced that it goes unnoticed even by veterans. The two conclude stunned that Pluto must hold an intellect to manage to camouflage his data in a fraction of a second. In the back seat of the car, Pluto admits to himself that he didn't expect to face the legendary president of the strongest guild, so soon Crowley breaks the silence, warning seriously for the boy to keep focus and calm his mind, because they have finally reached the destination. The luxurious limousine parks right in front of the imposing and gigantic building that serves as the main base for the Blue Dragon Guild. The young necromant observes wide-eyed the titanic size of the structure, while the elder orders him to keep following him. The massive stone gates, decorated with a carved dragon, begin to open with an imposing crash right before Pluto. They enter the monumental lobby under the faction's official banner that flutters majestically with the force of the night wind. The hallway guards salute respectfully, welcoming back the influential vice president. Without beating around the bush, the elder master demands to be taken straight to the president's room, receiving an immediate response of consent. The armored soldiers lead the way through the gray hallways, while Pluto walks calmly right behind the veteran. Pluto observes the guard's gear and concludes stunned that even the basic security of the venue is done by high-level paladins. Upon reaching the main door, the armored guard notes respectfully that due to their low rank, they will withdraw from there. Crowley just thanks them with a nod, keeping the firm posture of someone about to step into an important meeting. The veteran points to the massive metal portal and instructs solemnly that the boy himself must push the door to enter. The hero reflects stunned that a level 50 paladin would be the leader in any other guild, but here he can barely get close to the door. Pluto takes a deep breath and pushes hard on the heavy metal gates, generating a metallic pop that echoes through the entire hall. The portal opens fully, revealing the leader's massive and dark room with the president's silhouette sitting in front of a huge window. The man with yellow eyes starts the talk, revealing he already knows everything about the famous assassin who tried to take the boy's life. Pluto stands highly impressed to notice that the Blue Dragon Guild already held the full criminal record of that dangerous marksman. The president explains that the theoretical limit for an S-rank warrior to defeat an A-rank opponent would be just 3 levels of difference. He widens his golden eyes, stunned at the fact that a C-rank boy wiped out solo a veteran of a much higher level. The man notes that even with unlimited summons, Cedric's firing speed should have executed the hero before he created the army. President Victor Langley of S-rank raises his posture in an intimidating way and openly questions how many secrets the youth is hiding. Suddenly, Pluto widens his eyes, feeling a strange vibration in the air, and wonders if that is just a figment of his imagination. A dark and oppressive mist begins to fill the office, indicating that the president has just unleashed his terrible, murderous intent. Far away in the Blackwood family mansion, the arrogant Adrian tries to make a call, but receives only the voicemail message. He grinds his teeth in pure rage, ranting that the mercenary guaranteed he would resolve everything in minutes, but the entire night has already passed. The boy squeezes the cell phone furious, questioning what that incompetent elite sniper is doing that he doesn't answer. Adrian throws himself back on the couch, ranting that his brother was totally right about hired assassins being unreliable scum with no viable alternatives on hand. The boy glares at the device on the table and decides he will need to call a much more powerful ally. With no way out, the Blackwood heir places the cell phone on the bedside table, gearing up to make the difficult call. Adrian calls his older brother, revealing he is in serious trouble and begging for his help with urgency. The brother gets furious and demands to know who dared to humiliate the Blackwood family, forcing the youth to bark like a dog at school. The news leaves the older brother completely textless and shaking with outrage at the public humiliation suffered. The warrior explains that at the moment he is busy executing a very important official mission for his own guild. The youth faces the feared level 35 Bear King of the Frozen Earth, assuring he will handle everything right upon returning. He releases his fury and yells, telling the giant monster to get out of his way while preparing an overwhelming physical strike. With an extremely potent punch glowing in energy, the youth hits the colossal bear right in the face in the middle of the snow. The impact of the attack is so brutal that it throws the giant beast backward, kicking up a massive cloud of dust and ice. The tough, long-haired warrior takes a deep breath, tired but focused on finishing the job to go to the rescue of the youngest. Meanwhile, in the imposing headquarters of the Blue Dragon Guild, the silent clash inside the office keeps going. Leaning over the table, the imposing President Victor Langley demands that the boy reveal all his hidden secrets. In response to the threat, Pluto majestically wields his purple epic staff of necromancy without showing any dread. The youth glares at the leader with disdain and replies with audacity that his personal life is nobody's business at all. Furious at the boy's lack of respect, the president grinds his teeth in anger and yells that he just signed his own end. The powerful S-rank advances like a storm of dark smoke, delivering an overwhelming attack toward the necromancer. To defend against the advance, Pluto quickly activates Death Gaze, making his massive red eye flash in the sky. At the same time, he summons dozens of undead soldiers to create an immediate defensive block in the office. The boy runs to try and smash the room's large window, realizing he needs open space to manage to fight. The giant eye of the dead consumes the scene with its scarlet light, trying to apply the fear status on the powerful opponent. However, Victor Langley simply ignores the smoke barrier and advances like a literal bulldozer against the boy. With a sharp and unyielding look, the president proves that a weak mind would never belong to the leader of the strongest guild. He destroys the defenses, yelling that those are silly tricks. While the system warns that the panic lasted less than 1/100th of a second, Pluto stands incredulous to note that his best mind control skill didn't make the adversary back down, even for an instant. With no alternatives, he hopes his skeleton army can at least slow down the president's brutal charge. But with a single arm movement, the S-rank leader shreds dozens of bone soldiers as if they were made of paper. Pluto breaks into a cold sweat upon seeing the man emerge intact from the middle of the bone dust, walking in an implacable manner toward him. In an act of desperation, the hero quickly conjures more undead soldiers to try and hold the opponent's advance. He quickly alters the summon, transforming his skeleton into a dangerous gunpowder bomb with a flaming head. The necromancer commands his explosive soldier to detonate everything right there, seeking to open an escape route by sheer force. The guild president advances at high speed, not caring about the imminent approach of the kamikaze skeleton. A titanic blast of fire and destruction consumes the entire luxurious office of the leader, generating an overwhelming heat wave. Pluto glares at the storm of flames with a serious look, challenging the rival who insisted on receiving the explosive attack directly. The hero sends yet another massive horde of skeleton bombs straight into the fire, telling the rival to handle all that pain. Multiple detonations light up the windows at the top of the building, making the entire structure of the faction's headquarters shake. The guards on the outside hear the crashes and deduce, stunned, that the rookie must be very strong to cause such a noise. They comment that without a doubt, the boy must hold a supreme S-rank power to receive so much attention from the guild leaders. Back in the room, the hero pants from pure tiredness, leaning on the handle of his staff after draining almost all his mana in the attack. He observes the smoke, believing that even an S-rank warrior wouldn't come out unscathed from dozens of consecutive detonations. However, the dust settles and reveals the imposing president standing intact in his armor with a cold and unyielding look. The MC widens his eye in complete shock upon noticing the absurd difference in power between him and the supreme leader. He questions himself, terrified, how the man could receive that violent bombardment directly without suffering a single scratch. Victor Langley just wipes the splashes of ash from his shiny armor, demonstrating total boredom with the hero's strength. Annoyed by the taunt, the boy decides to go all out and plans to summon hundreds of skeleton bombs to drown the opponent. He raises his staff and begins channeling a literal army of the undead, covering the hall with purple spectral smoke. But with invisible speed, the president's giant hand cuts through the army and brutally grabs the youth's face. Lifting the boy by the neck, the S-rank leader demands in a violent manner to know what other cards he is hiding. With a terrifying face of pure fury, he squeezes the necromancer's throat even tighter, ordering him to speak the whole truth. Even without being able to breathe, the black-haired boy just grinds his teeth, keeping his unyielding pride with a sadistic and pure taunting smile. Pluto raises his free right hand and flips the bird right in the powerful guild president's face. President Victor Langley glares at the boy with his terrifying, glowing yellow eyes while the tension in the room hits the absolute limit. Pluto starts coughing heavily from the choking, but the leader's heavy hand finally drops him back to the floor. The powerful warrior's terrifying expression flips completely, and he flashes a friendly smile, saying the boy just passed the test. Pluto stands totally confused, missing the point entirely, and asks what exactly he could have passed after almost getting ended right there. The youth yells, shocked upon realizing that the entire deadly fight and the president's murderous intent were nothing but an act to test him. Elder Crowley chimes in, revealing he personally asked the leader to go tough because real despair reveals a warrior's true character. Rubbing his sore neck, the boy grumbles that he never imagined a kind-looking old man like the elder would play so dirty. The president tells him not to blame the elder, because dumping resources into someone who falls apart under pressure would be a complete waste of time. Victor admits he was impressed not just by the unlimited summoning skill, but mostly by the boy's unyielding spirit. He then extends his armored hand and formally introduces himself as Victor Langley, the powerful president of the renowned Blue Dragon Guild. The necromant stares at the supreme leader's extended hand for a few seconds, taking in the weight of that high-level introduction. The youth shakes the president's hand and introduces himself in a simple, straightforward way, using only his battle tag, Pluto. While the two lock handshakes, Elder Crowley watches from afar, highly satisfied with how that interaction turned out. Victor Langley walks back, explaining that the boy's character has already been proven, but his strength still needs an extra check. Pluto breaks into a cold sweat and asks if the president really wants to go another round with him after almost wrecking the whole office. The leader explains that the level gap between them is too massive to generate useful data, and the MC asks what he proposes instead. The man proposes that if the boy can solo clear the goblin cave on Apocalypse difficulty, the guild will dump maximum resources into him. Elder Crowley listens to the proposal with a concerned look, while the young necromant stays silent. Thinking over the gravity of the challenge, Pluto reflects on the real danger of tackling a level 15 dungeon on extreme difficulty with 0 allies to give support. The president assures that even if he fails, he will still be accepted into the guild, but without any right to special treatment or resources. With a look of pure determination, the MC raises his head and announces with conviction that he accepts that highly dangerous mission. The leader smirks, praising the young man's bravery and saying he hopes his power matches all that confidence shown. Upon leaving the room, the youth remembers that school textbooks make it clear that monsters on Apocalypse difficulty are infinitely stronger. He acknowledges that facing enemies 4 levels above his own will be tricky, but knows he needs to win to secure the guild's full backing. Back in the office, Elder Crowley questions if the president wasn't too harsh with the conditions set for a kid who just awakened. The elder points out that even the president himself at level 12 needed a 4-person party and almost failed to clear that dungeon. Victor Langley counters, saying that if the boy were only a bit better than they were in the past, it wouldn't make sense to spend all the guild's resources on him. The man states with a serious look that the person chosen to receive full investment from the country's largest faction needs to be something much greater. He wishes to find the strongest warrior of this entire era, while the MC finally reaches the entrance of the Goblin Cave. The youth checks his status, confirming he got plenty of rest and that his mana is fully recovered and ready for the intense combat ahead. He glares at the energy portal and selects the maximum apocalypse difficulty without hesitation to officially kick off his solo dungeon run. The portal glows with an intense red light wrapped in dark skulls, signaling that the most insane survival test has begun. With firm steps, the young necromant crosses the blazing energy barrier and disappears into the depths of the dark cave. On the outside, some local adventurers are left jaw-dropped at seeing a student go in solo, commenting that it's literal suicide. One of them yells desperate, saying he saw the youth select the extreme difficulty, and the other laughs, thinking his partner must be seeing things. Now inside the goblin cave, the MC walks through the darkness. Remembering how school books describe these annoying creatures, the system alerts that the goblins of this high-level dungeon are known everywhere for being exceptionally brutal beings. Several goblins begin to emerge from the cave shadows with creepy, bloodthirsty smirks upon noticing the human intruder's presence. The green monsters, armed with spiked clubs, let out malicious laughs, believing they will score a very easy meal today. The hero draws his imposing scythe-shaped weapon, calmly estimating that there must be about 100 enemies scattered across the area. With a confident smile on his face, the necromant warns that his own army is much larger and immediately conjures his bone troops. He commands his undead soldiers to advance without mercy, ordering them to drown the goblins under an implacable avalanche of bones. The slaughter begins, and system notices start popping up on the screen, showing an absurd amount of experience being stacked by the hero. He is impressed by the extreme difficulty, experience multipliers, realizing this clear-out should quickly take him to the next level. The youth glares at his own hands, glowing with energy, while the system panel updates his progress, showing he has already jumped to level 11. Looking at the ground, the youth notes with satisfaction that all the enemies guarding the dungeon entrance have been completely wiped out. Wasting no time on celebrations, the necromant orders his summons to begin marching into the darkest depths of the goblin cave. He regrets that his summoning range is only 5 meters, as he would love to just stand still, watching his soldiers clear everything on their own. Pluto gives a sarcastic smile to himself, wondering if he's already getting too lazy by dreaming of such an easy life. Noticing that his undead army has already advanced quite a bit, the MC runs right behind them so he won't miss any detail of the battle. Yet another elite enemy is cut in half by the bone soldiers, securing a massive amount of extra experience points for the hero. Walking in a calm manner, the boy notices that the number of monsters along the path was surprisingly low and wonders if it's already the end right after. The boy shakes his head, knowing that the ruthless President Victor would never create such an easy admission test for him. Suddenly, a massive crash echoes from the depths of the cave, making the stone walls shake violently and kicking up a lot of dust. Gigantic rocks begin to plunge from the dungeon ceiling while the tremor gets tighter, indicating the arrival of a major threat. Pluto grips the handle of his weapon, feeling the strong ground vibration, and alerts his undead soldiers that something truly colossal is approaching. The necromant points toward the darkness and orders his troops to charge with everything to intercept whatever is coming out of that dark hole. To the MC's surprise, his tough skeleton soldiers are shredded in a single second by a strike of crushing force. He stands quite shocked to see his summons destroyed so easily, confessing it's the first time he has witnessed such raw physical power. The youth narrows his eyes, taking a much more serious combat stance upon concluding that devastating opponent must be the cave boss. More stones roll from the dark walls the moment the monster's massive silhouette finally begins to loom menacingly before the hero. Pluto cracks a sarcastic smile on his face and mocks the green giant's grand entrance, commenting that he really knows how to draw everyone's attention. The monstrous level 10 creature identified as the feared colossal goblin shatters the rocks, looming imposing and furious in front of the bone army. The boy analyzes the rival's gigantic size, thinking the gunpowder skeletons would be perfect there, but the monster strikes too fast for him to convert them. He raises his staff, ordering a section of his troops to hold the boss's advance, while he readies the remaining soldiers for the explosive transformation. Dozens of undead warriors leap in coordination against the green giant, seeking to immobilize the opponent's arms at any cost. However, the terrible colossal goblin swings his giant club with full force, sending the skeleton attackers flying shattered through the air. While the boss amuses himself destroying the front line, Pluto exploits the gap to convert his undead into dangerous gunpowder bombs. Suddenly, the colossal green monster's eye flashes a crimson-red tone upon noticing the necromancer's shady movements in the shadows, letting out a deafening roar. The creature makes a quick move and delivers a crushing blow directly toward where the hero is positioned. Pluto widens his eyes in total surprise, realizing the big guy managed to spot him even in the middle of that general chaos. The giant's club-devastating impact hits the ground with the force of a meteor, generating a shockwave that makes the entire cave shake again. The monster roars in a triumphant manner, showing its sharp teeth, believing it fully crushed the small human intruder under its attack. But the MC manages to escape certain death by quickly activating his spectral form, which turns him into an intangible smoke in the rock crevice. Returning to normal inside a small crack in the stone, he pants relieved, commenting he would be gone twice if not for that dodge technique. With blood trickling from his lips and a sadistic look of revenge, Pluto activates Death Gaze, letting him know it's finally his turn to attack. A giant scarlet eye appears hovering in the cave darkness, focusing all its terrifying energy directly into the colossal goblin's mind. The giant is instantly paralyzed by the deep fear status, while the bomb skeletons run swiftly carrying their explosive barrels. Facing the paralyzed monster, the necromancer glares at the adversary in a cold manner, stating that from now on he is nothing but a mere ingredient. The boy positions himself in an imposing way, surrounded by his explosive summons, and completes with a taunt that he is the head chef who will run the banquet. He lets out a dark chuckle and whispers that it's time to start the true light and destruction show. He prepared especially for the giant. The youth commands the start of the grand banquet, sending his skeleton soldiers to detonate all the gunpowder barrels around the adversary's body. A deafening succession of massive fire explosions engulfs the colossal goblin, generating a violent heat wave that lights up the entire cave interior. The big guy screams in pure pain upon being burned alive by the relentless bombardment of flames, without being able to do absolutely anything to defend against the attack. The massive green creature cannot withstand the devastating damage and collapses lifeless on the ground, while the system announces he cleared over 12,000 experience points. Pluto glares at the giant's defeated body, surprised to have won so quickly, as he expected a long and exhausting war of attrition against the boss. He checks his status panel and grumbles, disappointed, noticing that all that experience gained wasn't enough even to make him level up. Suddenly, the MC stops in the middle of the hall and begins to look around with suspicion, feeling that something very strange is going on there. The system alerts that the boss was eliminated and that he can already exit the dungeon, but the hero remembers that previous clears always displayed a different notice. The boy realizes the current message didn't confirm the definitive completion of the challenge, which raises a big suspicion in the sharp necromancer's mind. The youth widens his eyes upon deducing the only logical answer to that mystery, realizing that this dungeon actually holds multiple bosses. He recalls school lessons that explain that in special dungeons with multiple bosses, it is mandatory to defeat all of them to score the completion. Understanding the situation, Pluto summons his remaining skeleton warriors and begins marching determined toward the even greater depths of the dungeon. New hordes of goblins, heavily armed with swords and spears, begin to emerge from the rocky walls, ready to block the necromancer's forces' advance. The youth glares at the enemy army with seriousness and notes that almost every creature in that deep sector of the cave is a high-level elite warrior. Without showing any hesitation, the hero commands his undead to steamroll the monster's defensive barrier, opening a path by raw brute force. While stacking tons of experience, the boy notices the absurd increase of elite opponents, deducing he is very close to the true final stage. A brutal and monstrous roar echoes ahead, revealing a gigantic horde of enemies stacked on the horizon, ready for the definitive showdown. Pluto glares at the massive crowd of monsters in the darkness and states with conviction that the sound of those war cries can only be coming from their true leader. He realizes the defeated goblins were just the tip of the iceberg upon spotting the gigantic silhouette of 3 new colossal bosses guarding the cave's end. The green monsters roar hysterically, waving their weapons and drooling with fury upon noticing a mere human dared to invade their sacred territory. The first goblin leader glares at the intruder with a look of pure doubt and weirdness, missing how that boy managed to survive up to there. Stuttering slightly with its raspy and monstrous voice, the creature points in Pluto's direction, confirming an insolent human stands before them. The hero glares at the scene, surprised to note that instead of just one remaining boss, now he will have to face 3 colossal heavyweights all at once. To make the situation even worse, the trio of giant bosses is accompanied by an army of at least 100 smaller goblins fully bloodthirsty. He checks his energy bar and notices the previous battles consumed half of his maximum mana, questioning if he will have fuel to win. The monster's leader lets out a deafening shout, ordering all his subordinates to advance immediately to shred the young necromante. An endless horde of small green creatures runs at high speed, making the ground shake while shouting that they will eat the boy alive. With no time to hesitate or save his magic energy, Pluto raises his staff and orders his entire undead army to charge for the clash. The violent physical clash begins with the 2 massive forces colliding in the middle of the cave, generating a true symphony of bones and metal crashing. One of the colossal bosses raises his giant stone hammer with ease, preparing a devastating strike capable of turning everything into bone dust. The hammer's brutal impact crushes dozens of skeleton soldiers all at once, proving that regular summons cannot even scratch the rival. A brave bone soldier tries to resist the advance, defending with his shield while the small goblins keep surrounding him from all sides. The scene turns into a true chaos of destruction, with the MC's summons being ruthlessly obliterated by the boss's overwhelming power. Observing from afar, the youth notes that the monsters are so bloodthirsty that in the fury of combat, they end up landing strikes and attacking each other. The hero acknowledges that the power gap between the troops is too big and that his regular warriors cannot even get close to the leaders. He calculates that his current mana won't hold out using Death Gaze against all the bosses, but remembers that leveling up will recover 30% of his mana. The youth knows very well that if his mana zeroes out completely before managing to level up, facing these 3 giants will mean his own end. With no other viable alternative on hand, the young necromant decides to risk everything on a single offensive play and channels all his remaining power into the attack. A dark and reddish energy begins to snake across the cave floor, going directly toward the 3 colossal leaders commanding the horde. The necromant focuses his magic and announces with a confident smile that the moment has finally arrived to summon his most valuable warrior to shine. Out of the spectral shadows emerges the feared level 11 elite skeleton archer, flaunting his imposing look of a cursed-eye hunter. Pluto orders the sniper to focus all fire on a single target, while the system shows that each arrow fired continuously drains the hero's mana. The necromantic commands his troops to focus attacks on the boss positioned on the left, applying the panic status to neutralize the giant's reactions. Exploiting the rival's panic state, he quickly converts his fallen warriors into dangerous and unstable skeletons loaded with gunpowder barrels. A colossal blast of flames consumes that entire cave area, generating a deafening crash that makes the ceiling rocks shake non-stop. The green giant on the left is fully engulfed by the storm of fire and consecutive detonations, taking massive damage that melts his armor. The first of the 3 bosses fails to withstand the explosive bombardment and falls down gone, generating another 12,500 experience points for the hero. Pluto celebrates seeing that his progress reached 98%, realizing that the loss of just one more boss will secure his highly desired level 12. The necromanta tells the archer to focus his entire aim on the second giant leader, while his own mana drops dangerously to almost fully tapping out. The MC drops to his knees on the ground, fully exhausted and panting at the exact moment the system panel confirms his mana hit 0 for good. The youth breaks into a cold sweat and realizes the extreme gravity of the situation, knowing that running out of magic energy in the middle of that monster lair means the end of everything. One of the dangerous surviving bosses exploits the boy's weakness and advances swiftly with his hammer raised, ready to deliver the death strike. But with superhuman reflexes, the youth manages to roll to the side at the last split second, escaping the destructive attack by a very narrow margin. Still on the ground and totally out of breath, the hero yells for his elite archer, begging him to manage to land the decisive shot at that moment. The hunter skeleton pulls the string of his mystic bow and fires a bright arrow infused with an absurd amount of devastating blue energy. The swift arrow pierces the giant's head with pinpoint precision, making the monster's dark blood splash violently across the stone walls. The second colossal boss drops lifeless on the cave floor, adding another generous amount of experience points to the necromant's account. The system flashes intensely on the screen and alerts that the MC finally leveled up to level 12 right in the middle of that life and death combat. The third and final colossal boss smashes the ground out of pure rage upon seeing his dead companions and charges roaring with his club to crush the intruder. The brutal attack kicks up a colossal cloud of dust and debris, covering the entire area while the young necromancer celebrates escaping by a very narrow margin. Thanks to the mana restored by the new level, he managed to activate the intangible form, revealing he would have been smashed if he delayed the dodge by a second. The last giant monster glares at the dust curtain, confused and surprised to notice that his crushing club didn't hit anything solid on the ground. Floating majestically at the top of the enemy's own hammer in his spiritual form, the boy mocks the rival, saying today is his lucky day. With his magic energy largely recovered, the hero flashes a terrifying smile and warns that now that insolent beast's fate is fully sealed, activating death. Gaze again, he projects a gigantic scarlet eye in the skies to apply absolute psychological terror on the adversary's mind. The last colossal heavyweight shakes from pure dread and stands fully paralyzed under the devastating effect of the fear status generated by the skill. Calmly pointing at the paralyzed opponent, the MC commands his elite archer to pierce the chest of that immobilized creature. The blue-hooded skeleton responds with total loyalty to his master's command and readies another powerful magic shot loaded with bluish energy. The accurate arrow pierces through the third boss's head, securing the definitive victory and another 12,500 experience points for the necromant. Pluto admires the skeleton archer's massive power, noting amazed that a fully charged shot from him is capable of soloing an extreme difficulty monster. He concludes that his evolved undead soldiers are infinitely superior both to their original forms and to the strongest monsters of that same level. Knowing that he holds only 4 more evolution slots available, the boy decides he will need to choose the next targets with extreme care and intelligence. The system glows, hovering in the air, confirming he still holds 4 opportunities to create the most powerful subordinates of his dark army. The small surviving goblins begin to shake out of pure fear upon witnessing the brutal end of all their colossal leaders all at once. The MC smiles coldly upon noticing the enemy's dread and warns that he won't hold any mercy because they serve only as fuel for his evolution. He points the stone staff and orders his skeleton warriors to advance without pity to deliver the finishing blow and wrap up the remaining monsters. While the bone army does the clear-out, the boy observes the skeleton archer lower his combat stance after playing his role perfectly. He makes a sign with his hand, ordering the sniper to rest, as there is no need to waste energy against such weak opponents. The hero reflects on the absurd strength of his evolved minions' magic arrows, highlighting that the only real issue with the technique is the absurd mana drain. Pluto realizes that if he keeps evolving soldiers, the shared mana will be drained very fast, and just the level recovery won't sustain his legion. He concludes that his absolute priority from now on will be to find gear or skills capable of drastically increasing his maximum mana. The last elite monster is easily taken down by the skeleton swords, securing the final experience points required for the map's completion. The challenge cleared notification pops up on the screen, confirming he successfully defeated over 100 regular monsters and 4 powerful cave bosses. A literal shower of shiny items and treasures begins to drop from the fallen enemies, leaving the young necromancer hyped to collect his reward. Outside the dungeon, 2 level 13 warriors argue exhausted, ranting about almost getting ended on level 9. Extreme difficulty. One of them stops complaining for a moment and wonders what would have happened to that mysterious student who entered the cave fully solo. Right after, the warrior shakes his head, laughing at himself, and deducing the kid certainly already passed away in there, or slipped away quietly to survive. Suddenly, a massive golden bell appears in the skies above the portal and begins to ring loudly, drawing the attention of everyone present in the plaza. The hunters explain, startled, that 3 rings of the dungeon bell mean only one extraordinary thing, which is the breaking of a historic world record. The warrior widens his eyes and repeats in a complete state of shock the phrase about the world record, unable to believe what he just heard. The entire crowd runs hyped toward the portal entrance, trying to figure out which legendary elite warrior group pulled off that unbelievable feat. The system board reveals that Pluto cleared the dungeon solo on extreme difficulty for the first time in world history, leaving the entire plaza buzzing. People begin pushing each other, yelling that they want the Supreme Warrior's autograph, while some bet that it's an incredibly beautiful female mage. The energy portal begins to flash intensely with reddish sparks, revealing the silhouette of someone walking out slowly to the crowd's frenzy. Pluto crosses the portal with an expression of total boredom, grumbling that he hit bad luck since all the rare items dropped serve only for tanks or warriors. The boy analyzes his massive grid of golden and purple rewards, deeply regretting that none of those pieces are useful for his mage class. Upon raising his head, the young necromant is caught by surprise by a strange commotion and murmurs a question upon noticing everyone is looking at him. A gigantic crowd of elite professional hunters is standing before him, staring at the boy with looks of pure amazement and absolute silence. Without understanding the hype, the MC breaks into a slight cold sweat and mentally asks what on earth is going on with those people there in the plaza. A loud buzz begins to spread quickly across the entire venue, with dozens of warriors commenting in a low voice about the youth's identity. The hunters yell desperate upon recognizing the boy, realizing shocked that the legendary world record breaker is actually just a student. Some men complain, frustrated, saying they expected a muscular giant or a very beautiful female mage, and not that skinny boy of such a delicate appearance. Pluto listens to the bizarre rumors with a drop of sweat on his forehead, asking himself annoyed where those people pulled those senseless ideas from. However, the crowd ignores the aesthetic details and frenetically advances in the hero's direction, yelling that it doesn't matter who he is since the record was broken. Several hunters surround the youth, pointing their cell phones and begging to add him to groups or inviting him to join their respective guilds. Extremely bothered by the unbearable noise, the MC begins pushing through people, determined to find a quiet spot to manage to breathe. The youth flees running and questions why everyone treats him as if he were some kind of rare alien just because he cleared an extreme difficulty dungeon. After running for a few blocks, the hero finally manages to throw off the fan horde and pulls his cell phone out of his pocket to make an important call. Holding his device, which has a fully cracked screen, the necromant decides to call Elder Crowley to report that the test has already been finalized. Far away in the guild office, Elder Crowley tries to convince the president to change his mind, reminding him that the boy awakened his skills just a few days ago. The elder alerts with a serious face that if something goes wrong and they lose a prodigy like the MC, the loss for the entire nation will be catastrophic. President Victor Langley lets out a long sigh and questions the elder about what exactly he proposes to ensure the young necromant's total safety. Crowley suggests they allow Pluto to take at least one professional healer into the dungeon, preventing his life from being at risk in case of accidents. Victor agrees that losing an unmatched genius like the boy in a silly admission test would indeed be a terrible regret for the Blue Dragon Guild. The leader yields to the arguments and authorizes the boy to take just one support healer into the dungeon, but makes it clear that that will be the only concession. Elder Crowley tilts his head slightly in a sign of respect and thanks the president, assuring he will pass on the new mission rules immediately. He pulls out his cell phone concerned, knowing the youth is very impatient and will certainly try to enter the dangerous dungeon without making any kind of preparation. But before the elder can even dial the boy's number, his own phone begins to vibrate, showing on the screen that Pluto himself is calling him. Upon noticing the sudden call, President Victor Langley widens his golden eyes, surprised at the MC's unbelievably fast response time. Answering the call, Elder Crowley asks if the young man ran into any trouble and lets him know that he received permission from the president to send a healer to support him. Pluto appreciates the concern, but calmly explains that he actually just called to let them know that the level 15 cave trial has already been completely finished. The elder's eyes widen, and he almost drops his cell phone at that unbelievable revelation from the boy, shouting in pure shock at what he just heard. Noticing the loud reaction of his right-hand man, President Victor Langley raises his head curiously and asks what on earth is going on with that call. Stuttering from pure shock, Crowley reveals that the young necromancer just cleared the extreme difficulty dungeon completely solo and even broke a historic world record. The powerful S-rank warrior leaps out of his chair with an excited smile on his face, unable to believe the speed of that insane achievement. Overcome with anticipation, the president extends his armored hand and immediately orders the elder to hand over the phone so he can speak directly to the prodigy himself. The elder hands the device to his superior while on the other end of the line, Pluto keeps calling for the old man. Not understanding the reason for all that sudden silence, Victor Langley takes over the call and asks directly if the boy really managed to pass his impossible trial without taking any serious damage. Recognizing the intimidating voice of the leader, the MC confirms simply and directly that he completed the challenge exactly as planned. The president flashes a wide grin full of sharp teeth, praising the boy's magnificent achievement and saying that he truly surpassed all original expectations. He takes a more serious tone and warns that he now has extremely important matters of national interest to discuss in person with the young necromancer. While walking back to the city, Pluto asks if he should head straight to the Blue Dragon Guild headquarters for this serious conversation. The president declines the request, explaining that he already has a much more private and upscale location in mind for this special meeting with the boy later. The young man arrives in front of the imposing Sunview restaurant, knowing that the luxurious venue is visited only by the top billionaires and elite hunters. Noticing that the guild leader hasn't arrived yet, the young man hesitates for a few seconds at the entrance, wondering if he should just go inside by himself. He looks at the few coins left in his pocket, remembering that he hasn't had time to sell the valuable loot dropped by the bosses in the Goblin Cave. Letting out a long sigh to calm his nerves, Pluto tells himself that if he doesn't fear the worst monsters in the dungeons, there is no reason to be intimidated by a restaurant. Adopting a firm posture, the hero walks toward the golden stairs, repeating to himself that the luxurious place is still just a spot to get some food. The elegant receptionist greets him politely, asking if he has a reservation, and the boy replies shyly that he is scheduled for VIP room number 1. The woman is left speechless upon realizing that this plain-looking young man is the president's guest of honor, and she asks to check his status screen for security purposes. The necromancer projects his holographic screen, displaying his basic level 12 information so the employee can perform the mandatory identification. After confirming all the data on the screen in complete surprise, the receptionist bows respectfully and points the clear way to the main dining room. She watches the boy walk away, thinking in astonishment that the VIP room is reserved only for national figures, and wonders who on earth that mysterious youth could be. With his hands in his pockets and showing total indifference to the luxury around him, Pluto walks calmly down the sumptuous hallway of the elite establishment. The restaurant manager, dressed in a formal suit, approaches him with extreme courtesy, revealing that he has already received the president's orders and asks the young man to follow him. While walking guided by the employee, the necromancer observes the tables in the dining room, noticing that every customer there wears clothing and armor of priceless value. Sitting at one of the more private tables, the arrogant heir of the Blackwood family enjoys a very expensive steak. While basking in his own showing off, Adrian stares at his plate with an annoyed look, grumbling that the assassin Cedric surely failed the mission to eliminate the hero and is now too embarrassed to show his face. He swallows his food, thinking maliciously that his older brother will soon return to crush Pluto for good, and until then, he will continue to feast in luxury. Suddenly, the calm footsteps of the MC echo through the dining room, passing right by the table where his hated high school rival is sitting, eating peacefully. Adrian almost chokes on his food and widens his eyes in absolute panic upon seeing the silhouette of his black-haired rival walking freely through the restaurant. Regaining his composure, the villain flashes a wicked smile, concluding that while he might not beat Pluto in terms of level right now, he can humiliate him using the power of money. With a rough and noisy gesture, he slams the handle of his silverware onto the table, drawing everyone's attention and intentionally cutting off the young man's path. Adrian shouts mockingly, asking if Pluto has been making big money lately to have the nerve to try to eat at a restaurant as expensive as this one. The manager looks at the rich youth with disapproval, while Pluto sighs internally, cursing the annoying persistence of that arrogant pest in his way. The green-haired boy stands up and scoffs, saying that such luxury is not for broke people like him, since the minimum charge there costs thousands of gold coins. The employee extends his hand, blocking the villain's advance, and firmly warns that young Pluto is a VIP guest, demanding that he watch his arrogant mouth. The Blackwood heir blinks in confusion, repeating the word VIP, unable to process the idea that his hated C-rank rival could have such a massive privilege there. He starts laughing like a maniac, pointing at the hero and telling the manager to stop playing jokes, since the boy is nothing more than a penniless orphan from the city slums. He grits his teeth, claiming with disdain that the young man's only title is being a mere trial candidate for the guild, asking if he already considers himself part of royalty. In response to the ridiculous provocations, Pluto silently releases a massive amount of dark, oppressive energy, covering the entire area with his purple aura. Feeling the crushing pressure, the rich kid sweats in fear and stutters, desperately remembering the laws that forbid real combat and physical fights inside establishments. The manager goes into a total panic and begs the hero to calm down, knowing that if the president's guest of honor starts a brawl there, he will lose his job. Pluto glares at his rival with a cold, piercing look, asking with complete sarcasm why he should stay calm as his mystical summons begin to appear. The employee widens his eyes in terror, realizing that a physical clash seems completely unavoidable and that his professional career has just been ruined. But the MC just smirks out of the corner of his mouth and materializes a glowing bow of energy in his hands, saying he just wanted to show his classmate something, displaying the blue weapon right in his rival's face. The necromancer asks sarcastically if he happens to recognize the true owner of that mystical bow. Adrian immediately recognizes the unmistakable design of Cedric's bow and takes a step back, breaking into a cold sweat as he realizes the professional assassin failed terribly. Pluto coldly states that the owner of that weapon has been taken care of by his own hands and challenges his rival to send whatever other dirty trick he wants to try against him. Adrian Blackwood falls into a complete state of despair as he processes the unbelievable revelation that the level 18 professional assassin was defeated by the boy. Without caring at all about his opponent's panic, Pluto simply dispels the energy weapon with a slight wave of his hand, proving his total physical superiority. The necromancer turns his back on his rival and calmly asks the manager to finally lead him to his luxurious reserved dining room. Adrian grits his teeth in pure envy for never having entered one of those private rooms, wondering furiously how a mere C rank could defeat a level 18 overcome by hatred and the public humiliation of being ignored. The green-haired villain screams Pluto's name with all the strength in his lungs. The MC just slightly moves his eyes from the corner, showing total indifference and contempt for his adversary's hysterical shouting. Adrian yells furiously that hiding behind the Blue Dragon Guild won't keep the boy protected forever, because that isn't the only powerful faction in the country. Suddenly, an extremely heavy hand rests on the villain's shoulder, while a gruff, commanding voice asks if he is really looking down on the guild. Completely annoyed by the interruption, the rich kid draws his double-bladed battle axe with agility, preparing to strike whoever touched him. He spins his body, delivering a furious swing and shouts, asking who the insolent fool is that dared to lay a hand on him while he was speaking. However, Adrian's attack is easily blocked by a strong metallic spear, generating a violent metallic crash that echoes through the entire restaurant. Adrian takes a step back in fear, realizing he was blocked by a bronze soldier, and immediately begins to sweat in cold fear as he predicts who summoned them. Elder Crowley emerges imposingly from the shadows of the room, stating darkly that defaming the guild in public and attacking the vice president are unforgivable actions. The Blackwood boy drops his weapon to the floor with a clatter and begins to stutter in terror, offering immediate apologies to the influential level 75. Elder Crowley's mystical blue eyes glow with anger, declaring that any ordinary person would have been seriously hurt by that strike, and that today he will teach him a lesson. Adrian tries to defend himself, desperately pointing out that the high-end rules forbid any kind of violent combat inside that luxurious restaurant. The elder listens to the excuse with a mocking look, while the imposing President Victor Langley slowly approaches from behind with a cold expression. With a terrifying gaze that radiates pure authority, the S-rank Supreme Leader walks toward the arrogant youth and declares absolutely that he makes the rules. The young Blackwood heir freezes completely, swallowing hard as he feels the colossal abyss of power separating his existence from that legendary warrior. The president channels a massive amount of golden energy and electricity into his armored fist, preparing a punch of devastating force. With a swift and brutal movement, Victor Langley delivers the physical strike, launching the green-haired boy away as if he were a mere ragdoll. Adrian crashes through the huge tempered glass window of the elite restaurant, shattering the glass into 1,000 pieces as he is thrown straight out of the building. The president dusts off his hands and warns everyone that Pluto is a guest of honor of the guild, and any trash who messes with the boy will face the exact same fate. Outside, people on the sidewalk are left in complete shock upon seeing a body thrown brutally through the window of the most expensive restaurant in town. Lying in the middle of the street with smoke escaping his mouth, the rich kid groans in pure agony, begging for someone to call an ambulance urgently. The witnesses outside recognize the two supreme leaders at the top of the broken window, fearfully identifying the commanders of the Blue Dragon Guild. Everyone begins to whisper in astonishment, deducing that the student in the black suit who was arguing with Adrian Blackwood is actually the president's VIP guest. Pluto looks at the president calmly, showing no surprise or gratitude regarding that over-the-top physical intervention in the middle of the dining room. The manager of the venue runs desperately toward the new visitors, bowing deeply and welcoming them with his voice trembling from nervousness. Victor Langley ignores the praise and informs the employee that they will walk to the private room themselves, leaving the cleanup of that mess entirely up to him. The man bows respectfully, firmly guaranteeing that he will take care of all that mess left in the dining room in a matter of just a few minutes. The manager immediately orders his staff to evacuate the curious customers, clean up the broken glass, and send the injured Blackwood boy straight to the hospital. While walking toward the private room, the president sincerely praises the necromancer for managing to clear the highest difficulty dungeon all by himself. Crowley agrees, pointing out that the young man doesn't have a single scratch on his body and that even his student clothes remain flawless after the battle. The supreme leader lets out a slight sigh and tells them both to get into the VIP room right away. Since all that wonderful food must be getting cold by now, Pluto looks at the old leader with a drop of sweat on his forehead, thinking in surprise that he never imagined that gentle-looking elder kept such a wild side hidden away. The elder congratulates the boy with pride, stating that his impressive extreme difficulty solo victory proved they were completely right about him. The young man chuckles, agreeing, but acknowledges internally that he almost didn't make it out if it weren't for the timely level up that restored his depleted mana. The trio finally arrives before the imposing high-quality wooden doors of VIP room number 1 in the most private sector of the luxury restaurant. Crowley tells the boy to relax and guarantees with a mysterious smile that soon all his depleted mana will start overflowing intensely from his body again. The doors open to reveal a gigantic hall with a massive round table filled with exotic dishes and refined delicacies that radiate a strong magical energy. Pluto widens his eyes in amazement as he focuses on the dishes, concluding that even without knowing the exact price of that table, the presentation alone screams that it is incredibly expensive. The friendly elder gives the black-haired boy a light pat on the shoulder and speaks casually, telling him to choose any seat he wants at the table. Victor Langley settles into his chair and encourages the MC to start eating right away, telling him not to feel any shyness there. The elder reveals that he had the kitchen prepare all available buff dishes, knowing that the hero's mana and stamina were drained to the absolute limit today. He explains that certain elite support professionals prepare special meals capable of granting massive boosts to regeneration and physical attributes. Upon being consumed, these magical foods instantly grant insane bonuses like accelerated mana recovery and significant increases to defense and physical strength. The necromancer listens to the explanations very attentively, realizing that the magical cooking of this new world is indeed far more powerful than he imagined. Crowley offers a piece of bluish meat to the young man, guaranteeing that this mystical demon's steak will absurdly increase the speed of his magical recovery. Upon swallowing the food, the young man receives a 200% regeneration bonus and feels all his depleted magical energy overflow violently. The elder comments with satisfaction that although the food effects are temporary, the bonuses granted by them are of extreme importance for elite hunters. Next, he offers a piece of explosive red pepper, guaranteeing that this exotic food will give a massive boost in raw strength to the young necromancer. Crowley continues serving various dishes, cheerfully explaining that one of them increases the user's agility, while the other ensures a heavy bonus to physical defense. Without hesitating for a single instant, the MC begins to devour everything in a frantic manner, stuffing his mouth with food without caring about the etiquette of the luxurious place. Totally full and with a stuffed stomach, the young man relaxes in his chair, feeling like a true superhuman with all his physical attributes boosted. The president wipes his mouth with a linen napkin and warns in a serious tone that now that the boy is fed, they can finally discuss the important business. First, he officially congratulates the boy on his perfect performance in the admissions trial, declaring that from this moment on, he is a member of the Blue Dragon Guild. However, the leader points out that the young man's case is unique, and they will need to keep his affiliation an absolute secret to avoid drawing the attention of envious rivals. The youth perfectly understands the security risks involved in the process and nods his head, agreeing to hide his true abilities in front of crowds. Victor Langley adopts an even more focused expression and asks the MC if he is aware of who the true enemies of that nation are. Pluto replies that he only knows from school textbooks that the rival nations known as C and Z have always maintained a hostile and dangerous stance against them. The leader confirms that the neighboring countries are terrible threats and that they constantly send undercover professional assassins to eliminate. Promising elites, Crowley explains that this is the real reason for hiding his identity, because if rival nations discover the existence of an unlimited necromancer, they will try to take his life. Clenching his fist tightly, the hero wonders with indignation why every world he visits always has foolish nations, starting wars and conflicts. The experienced elder observes the young man's silent reaction, startled as he feels for the first time such an overwhelming and dark intent to eliminate emanating from him. The old mage gestures with his hand, explaining that political disputes between humans, though dangerous, are not the worst peril faced by that world. Pluto is surprised by that impactful statement and asks curiously if something much worse than a large-scale war between countries could really exist. Slapping his open hand on the round table, the president confirms that it does and asks him if he is truly prepared to hear the terrifying truth of that world. The necromancer locks eyes with the supreme leader with a serious and firm gaze, indicating that he wants to hear the whole story without any omissions or silly excuses. Victor Langley reveals with a dark look that to the eyes of a certain alien race, this entire world is nothing more than a vast hunting ground for harvesting. Pluto widens his glowing eyes in complete shock upon hearing that bizarre metaphor, asking anxiously what exactly this hunting ground means. The man summarizes that there are basically two types of magical rifts in that world, one being the Rift of Blessing and the other known as the Terrible Rift of Calamity. Demonstrating total attention to the explanation, the MC asks directly what the crucial difference in practical operation between these two rifts would be. Victor Langley holds up 3 fingers in a teaching manner, revealing that the rifts of blessing and calamity differ on 3 points of extreme importance. First, he explains that the rifts of blessing open only with the use of rare keys, appearing in a controlled manner exactly at the spot where the hunter uses the item. On the other hand, the rifts of calamity appear completely at random, potentially opening up in deep forests, mountains, or even right in the middle of major cities. The second crucial difference lies in the inner monsters of the blessing rifts, which always have a level corresponding to that of the hunter who initiated the challenge. Meanwhile, in the rifts of calamity, monsters appear in completely random levels, quantities, and types, and they are infinitely stronger than ordinary blessing enemies. Pluto looks at the leader with suspicion upon discovering that the demonic beasts of the Calamity Rifts are far more powerful than any creature he has faced. The president extends his index finger, stating with seriousness that the third difference, and also the most critical of all, involves the traffic direction of these rifts. He explains that in ordinary dungeons and rifts, humans choose the moment to enter, but the internal creatures can never cross the portal into our world. However, the demonic beasts of the Rifts of Calamity can make the reverse journey and freely cross the portal, invading our world to take lives. Pluto is totally horrified by the revelation and asks if monsters can truly do the same as humans and invade our dimension through the rifts. The president confirms the fact and repeats his tragic initial phrase, emphasizing that to the monsters, we are just helpless livestock waiting for the moment to be harvested. The necromancer breaks into a cold sweat, concluding that compared to rival countries, the uncontrollable rifts of calamity represent the true world-ending threat. Victor ponders that the small scattered rifts are problematic but not catastrophic, revealing in a dark tone that true human despair lies in something else. He reveals that every 10 years, a colossal rift over 1 kilometer tall appears in a nation, opening hundreds of smaller rifts around it at the exact same time through it. The terrible Demon King descends to Earth to slaughter humanity, forcing the affected country to fight to the end in a tragedy called the Rift War. With an alarmingly serious expression, the supreme leader of the Blue Dragon Guild reveals that the next great Rift War will hit the planet in exactly 1 year. Pluto is stunned by such a short deadline and asks with annoyance why a brutal and devastating conflict like this was never mentioned in any school textbook or news broadcast. Crowley closes his eyes and explains that rift wars are catastrophic nightmares, and revealing the truth would cause mass panic throughout the entire civilian population. The black-haired young man lowers his head thoughtfully and asks seriously if the battlefield of the next great rift war will be Nation A itself. Both President Victor Langley and Elder Crowley widen their eyes in complete silence, startled by the boy's unbelievably fast deduction. The old mage stares at the youth with a look of pure surprise and breaks the silence of the room, asking him how on earth he managed to guess that secret information. Pluto replies firmly that he could feel a deep anxiety and dread hidden beneath both of their imposing and calm postures as leaders. The president stares at the boy with his sharp, glowing yellow eyes, absorbing every word of that surgical psychological analysis made by a simple student. He admits that the young man is incredibly perceptive, confessing that he believed he had hidden his feelings well, but was easily read by a high school youth. Pluto stares fixedly at his teacup and confesses in a nostalgic tone that he can see that agony in others because he knows that feeling all too well. He recalls his past life as a simple trench soldier holding an assault rifle amidst involuntary tremors of dread before a bloody battle. The leader asks him about what he just said, and the necromancer stutters, quickly covering it up while cursing himself internally for thinking out loud. Pluto admits he figured out the location just by observing the leader's nervousness, but asks how they managed to predict where the Rift War would take place. Crowley explains that there is a totally neutral international organization called the Oculus Guild that monitors the prophecies and destiny of all known worlds. He shares that this mysterious faction recruits prophets from all over the world to decipher visions of the future and sell these valuable forecasts for profit. Knowing that Oculus can predict the location of the rift 2 years in advance, Pluto ponders that while this warning is useful, there is another serious problem. The young man points out with concern that if Nation A is dragged into this destructive war, nothing would stop neighboring countries C and Z from attacking while they are weak. The elder reveals that an absolute law exists, forbidding any country from attacking the host nation during the preparation period, under penalty of becoming an enemy of all humanity. The necromancer finally understands the reason why the severe military tensions with Nation Z fell silent so suddenly and mysteriously in recent times. The president adds that even without that law, global clashes would decrease because all countries focus most of their wealth on preparing for the rift. Quite boldly, Pluto asks if humanity has ever considered the plan of crossing one of these calamity rifts to invade the dimension of the beasts itself. Victor Langley opens his golden eyes wide and remains in a deathly silence of pure astonishment. Upon hearing that unbelievably insane question coming from the boy, Elder Crowley shouts furiously at the young man to completely forget that absurd idea, reminding him that holding back the invasion of the Demon King himself would already cost everyone's lives. He recalls with horror that in the last war, the Blue Dragon Guild itself suffered over 70% casualties, almost being permanently wiped off the map. Pluto lowers his head thoughtfully upon understanding the titanic scale of that military tragedy. Acknowledging that he was a bit naive in his initial thoughts, Victor looks at the boy with a glimmer of hope in his eyes, firmly declaring that such destruction belongs to the past, and that now everything will change thanks to the young man. He states with determination that the hero's army of unlimited summons will be humanity's greatest weapon, both against rival countries and in the Rift War. The president emphasizes commandingly that the dark power of the young necromancer is capable of altering the destiny and survival of an entire nation all by itself. He warns that the boy will have exactly 1 year to prepare and guarantees that the Blue Dragon Guild will provide all the unconditional financial and military support he needs. The Supreme Leader turns toward his vice president and commands Elder Crowley to immediately bring out the special gift they prepared for the young man. The elder places a heavy and luxurious black briefcase on the table, creating a dull thud that makes the silverware rattle slightly under the watchful eyes of the necromancer curious. The hero asks what is so important inside, and Crowley encourages him to open the briefcase, revealing that those are the faction's welcome gifts. The young man unlatches the metallic locks of the case, generating a sharp click, and begins to lift the lid. Revealing the mystical glow of the rare items stored inside, Pluto stares at the inside of the briefcase in complete shock as he comes across a true collection of legendary artifacts and golden keys of priceless value. Crowley carefully lifts the first standout item, explaining that this eye-shaped mystical artifact is called the Phoenix Eye and is of legendary quality. The system details the attributes, revealing that the Level 1 Divine Jewel allows instant teleportation to any other bearer linked to the item. The Elder notes that legendary equipment usually carries heavy level restrictions, but that Phoenix Eye has the extremely rare advantage of being equipable at Level 1. The youth breaks into a cold sweat reading the artifact's description and is impressed by the insane utility of managing to teleport across any distance while being only level 1. But the president reveals that the item was a personal gift from the Phoenix Guild, and there are only 6 of these sacred jewels in circulation across the entire planet. The necromancer asks with concern how the president will manage to get around in emergencies if he gives away his own personal treasure to him. Victor displays his own jewel glowing around his neck, ensuring that the Blue Dragon Guild received 2 units of that valuable artifact. He notes that for obvious security reasons, the boy's jewel is connected solely to his, ensuring that only the supreme leader will be able to travel to his side. Pluto smiles internally upon realizing that he now has the strongest hunter in the country as his personal bodyguard. Though he needs to use the jewel very intelligently, Elder Crowley proudly lifts the second item, revealing that this beautiful level 1 ring was the very first legendary treasure he acquired in his youth. The holographic panel displays the status of the wonderful Moonlight Ring, which ensures a flat bonus of 100 mana, in addition to doubling regeneration and power under a full moon. Without wasting a single second, the black-haired necromancer slides the glowing ring onto his finger, feeling a strong wave of magical energy surge through his veins. The system confirms the immediate activation of the mystical effect, showing that the hero's maximum mana instantly rose from 150 to 250. The Elder explains that mages require a lot of energy, and the MC expresses enthusiastic thanks upon noticing that this wonderful ring solved his biggest current problem. Adopting an alarmingly serious look, the old mage warns that this ring accompanied him for a decade, and he will be truly furious if the boy dares to lose it. Pluto stutters nervously before the Elder's intimidating gaze and promises with a forced smile that he will guard the ring with his life as long as he is breathing. The Elder points to the 3 remaining blessing keys in the briefcase, and the hero rejoices upon recognizing the mystical items, planning to use them to level up fast. However, Crowley quickly pulls the golden keys back into his hands, leaving the young necromancer frozen and open-mouthed, not understanding that action of his. The mage warns him seriously that those keys are extremely rare across the entire country, and the guild possesses only 9 units, so they must not be wasted for no reason. The young man asks when he should use them then, and the Elder explains that the monsters in the Blessing Rifts grant far more experience and rewards at high levels. He places the keys back into the boy's hand, advising him to wait until he hits a level evolution block to manage to draw out the maximum potential of the item. Since the young man wishes to level up very quickly and won't be able to use the mystical rifts yet, he asks the leaders if they have another map recommendation to suggest. The president gives a subtle smile behind his cup and reveals mysteriously that he and the Elder have already found the perfect training location for the boy. The location in question is the monumental Apex Dungeon Hall, a gigantic training complex built in partnership by the 5 largest guilds in the country. Pluto recalls having heard of that legendary hall, known for housing the greatest variety and difficulty of monsters with the best rewards in the country. Totally thrilled, and with a wide grin on his face, the young necromancer confesses that he can hardly wait to start training and asks how he can get there. Elder Crowley pulls a glowing travel crystal from his pocket, revealing that this jewel allows one to teleport instantly to any sector of the complex. He hands over the mystical crystal and instructs the hero to go straight to Hall number 3, which has dungeons ranging from levels 10 to 25, ideal for his solo training. Pluto says he is in his best physical and mental shape, completely prepared to raid any dungeon that shows up in front of him. President Victor looks at the young man seriously and warns him to take the absolute maximum amount of care as soon as he sets foot in the training location. The young necromancer replies that he knows this very well and ensures that the dungeons of that Apex Hall are dangerous, promising to be very cautious. But the Supreme Leader alerts that the true danger is not just the monsters there, but rather the other professional hunters who visit the lobby. He explains that the youths in that hall are the arrogant elites of the 5 largest guilds in the country, which is why Pluto must avoid entering actual combat with them. Victor reveals that the real reason for the request is that those prodigies wouldn't stand the slightest chance of victory against the MC's broken summons. A bit embarrassed by the sincere praise, Pluto tries to reassure the boss, promising that he won't hurt anyone and will try to steer clear of trouble. The president then directs him to show the golden teleportation crystal if he gets cornered, because even the rookies of the large guilds respect that item. With all the gifts delivered and business properly settled, the leader warns that it is time to start the training and asks to be contacted in case of emergencies. While a strong golden energy begins to wrap around his body, Pluto observes the valuable items he won and mentally reviews the name of each treasure. In the middle of the glowing beam of light, the young man makes a silent promise that he will not let down the trust of those two powerful men. In the very next second, a massive and loud blast of blue magical energy crosses the city skies, confirming the teleportation of the MC. The spot where the young necromancer stood seconds ago is now completely empty, leaving behind only remnants of bluish magical smoke in the air. Sitting calmly at the huge dining table, Elder Crowley observes the ceiling while the president remains standing, staring at the trail of light that vanished. The white-bearded elder smiles discreetly and confesses that he is already anxious to see how much the young prodigy will have evolved by their next meeting. Victor agrees that the young man's evolution is inevitable, but alerts that before anything else, they need to clear out some filthy trash that is standing in the way. The vice president's look turns extremely sharp as he asks if he is referring to that cowardly hit attempt against the hero. The president confirms firmly and reveals that the guild's intelligence division finally found out who the mastermind behind that terrible attack was. He reveals that the culprit for everything is precisely that insolent boy whom he himself just launched out of the restaurant for a lack of respect. Crowley finally understands his boss's fury and comments that if they hadn't been in a crowded lobby, the strike would have gone straight through the boy's skull. He warns that any threat against the MC must be eliminated and asks if the investigation into the past of that insolent heir has finished yet. The president reports that the boy is just a classmate with an A rank and that his father is only a common local rich guy, but points out that there is a single detail. The boy's older brother is one of the captains of the elite squad of the famous White Tiger Guild, one of the 5 great military forces in the country. The elder comments that a captain wouldn't be a problem, but the master of that rival guild is extremely short-tempered, and a widespread conflict would be quite annoying. With a terrifying look, Victor decrees that Pluto represents the future of the nation, and that not even the White Tiger leader could stop him from crushing that threat. Facing that intimidating aura full of lethal fury, the white-haired elder stares at the president in silence before making his next question. The leader orders that the spoiled heir be detained immediately by special forces and warns that there will be zero tolerance if the boy tries to resist. He determines that the guards must handle him right then and there if necessary, showing that his patience with the enemies of the country has completely run out. Crowley begins to concentrate his own magical energy and gladly accepts the mission, guaranteeing that he will personally take care of settling that serious matter. Victor thanks the elder and demands that the entire operation be done in a very loud and flashy way so that everyone knows it was on the orders of the Blue Dragon. The experienced mage makes a brief respectful bow and activates his glowing teleportation circle, vanishing from the luxurious room in a fraction of a second before leaving. The elder realized the brilliance of the plan to draw all the fury of the rival families and the White Tiger Guild directly toward their own faction. The supreme leader reflects that since the boy is still developing and hasn't reached full maturity, the Blue Dragon must act as a shield and absorb all the danger for him. Meanwhile, a huge column of light appears in the center of a gigantic and luxurious hall filled with hundreds of hunters talking and preparing themselves. The place is a total mess, with several warriors shouting loudly, looking for tanks and healers to form high-level dungeon parties. The young necromancer observes in shock the colossal size of the place and the absurd amount of people. While a huge holographic board displays the world records currently at level 12, with over 70% experience, he stares at his own hand, focused on leveling up fast to unlock new skills. He ponders which dungeon there would yield the greatest amount of points without making him waste precious time, until a female voice suddenly calls out to him. A friendly girl wearing a huge witch hat appears, praising the hero's looks, and asks with a smile if it is his first time in that hall. Pluto confirms briefly, and the young woman introduces herself as Layla Shaw, revealing that she hunts around there so much that she ended up becoming a dungeon guide in her spare time. Suspicious of such free kindness, the young man asks what the catch is, and the witch admits while sweating in nervousness that each answer given will cost 1 gold coin. The necromancer checks his pockets and realizes he only has 10 gold coins left, knowing that he will need to sell his gathered items very soon. Without hesitating for a single second, he tosses one of the gold coins to the young guide and asks directly which dungeon there guarantees the highest experience. Layla catches the coin in the air, a bit surprised by the ambition of the young man, who reaffirms that he is interested solely in the absolute maximum limit of points he can obtain. She explains that the laws of the world prevent hunters from facing dungeons with a difference greater than 3 levels, limiting the young man from level 12 to level 15. The girl reveals that the ideal dungeon is the level 15 spider nest of the abyss, but seriously warns that he will have to wait a long time for it. Curious, the young man asks the reason for such a delay, and Layla shares that this lair is full of tiny spiders that attack in swarms, requiring perfect parties. With a cold expression, Pluto calmly replies that he doesn't need to wait for anyone, leaving the young woman startled that he doesn't comprehend the danger of the place. She points toward a corner of the hall and shows a highly specialized and trained squad that was formed exclusively to clear that nest. To prove her point of view, the witch reveals with quite a bit of enthusiasm that this elite group just broke the time record for that dungeon. Meanwhile, several bloodied hunters come stumbling out of the portal, with one warrior screaming desperately for the healer to treat his injured eye. Layla points to the injured group and asks if Pluto really believes that his team could do any better than that almost perfect group. Maintaining an extremely calm posture and with his back to the girl, the young necromancer coldly reveals that he actually doesn't have a team. He turns his face sideways with a confident look and firmly declares that he intends to challenge that dangerous dungeon entirely solo. The dungeon guide widens her eyes and falls into a complete panic, unable to believe that this rookie wants to enter the terrifying spider lair all by himself. The girl's scream of shock echoes through the entire lobby, causing dozens of experienced warriors to stop what they are doing to stare at the young man. Pluto asks the reason for all the noise, and the witch quickly covers her own mouth, apologizing for accidentally drawing everyone's attention. The warriors around break into laughter and begin to mock the young man, saying that dungeons do not have easy settings for kindergarten kids. The girl apologizes again for speaking so loudly, but the necromancer walks peacefully toward the portal. Saying he is already used to jokes, Layla tries to stop him one more time, begging him not to commit that foolish choice, while the hero just coldly thanks her for the information provided. The dungeon's holographic panel warns that the recommended level is above 15 for large teams, detailing that the current clear record stands at 46 minutes. Upon reading the lair details and discovering that there are over 1,000 monsters inside, the hero's face takes on an expression of pure surprise and focus. He realizes that clearing a location with such a high density of enemies will bring an absurd amount of experience, and he can barely contain his anticipation to level up. Since it is his first time facing so many monsters together, the young man decides to act with caution and selects the hero difficulty just to test the level of the enemies. One of the injured hunters who just came out of the portal notices Pluto entering entirely alone on hero difficulty and calls him a fool for ignoring the terrible state of their group. An elite S-rank youth looks down on the MC, commenting that not even he would dare to go solo, predicting that a C-rank necromancer won't last 5 minutes inside. As soon as the hero crosses the magical portal, he finds himself in an extremely dark and terrifying cave filled with gigantic spiderwebs everywhere. The young man feels the heavy air with a horrible smell of decay while listening to dozens of nasty noises of creatures crawling along the cave walls. Without wasting time on the disgusting environment, the young necromancer wields his legendary staff and summons dozens of undead soldiers with his purple flames. The MC's eyes glow intensely in the darkness as he notices that a massive horde of tiny spiders has begun to descend in his direction in an aggressive manner. Pluto finds the situation perfect to test his army and commands his skeletal troops to stand in combat positions against the approaching horde. With a commanding order and pointing his finger forward, the hero commands his undead to wipe out every last one of those annoying crawling pests. The agile skeleton soldiers advance at high speed against the small beasts, with their swords drawn, leaping right into the middle of the enemy nest. One of the skeleton warriors delivers a powerful slash that crushes dozens of spiders at once, generating constant experience gain notifications on the screen. However, the amount of monsters is absurd, and several abyss spiders begin to climb up the legs and armor of one of Pluto's undead soldiers. The MC analyzes the combat closely and notices that the small creatures can immobilize his skeleton warriors if they all attack together at once. One of the hero's summons begins to have its bone structure crack due to the weight and the immense amount of small monsters biting its skull. Pluto admits he didn't expect those little monsters to be so annoying, but smiles remembering that his army possesses very diverse types of warriors. The young man activates his special ability and instantly transforms the ordinary skeleton into a bomber carrying a gigantic barrel of explosive gunpowder. The bomber runs toward the nest and creates a colossal area detonation, wiping out hundreds of enemies and raising the hero's experience bar all at once. The necromancer happily does the math and realizes that the advanced speed of that bomber will turn that cave into a true gold mine for him. He gives a confident snap of his fingers and acknowledges that for someone with unlimited mana and infinite bombs, that dangerous lair is actually a training paradise. Knowing that normal skeletons have trouble against small targets, Pluto decides to convert all his frontline summons into bombers. An endless sequence of deafening explosions begins to echo through the dark corridor of the cave, generating a true shower of points on the system screen. The solo experience bonus of that Apex haul mixed with the mass clearing works perfectly, making the hero instantly rise to level 13. Without hesitating, he opens his holographic menu and distributes all newly acquired attribute points into maximum mana, which is the vital stat for his summons. The system panel confirms that Pluto's attributes have been successfully updated, raising his total magical power to 255 points. He acknowledges that the ring helped quite a bit to increase his energy reserve, but ponders that he still needs a lot more if he wants to unlock the next limit break. The young man has a hunch that restriction removals always solve his biggest current needs, and deduces that the next one might focus on increasing his mana. Suddenly, a gigantic adult spider emerges from the ceiling and fires an extremely fast stream of sticky, sharp web toward the distracted youth. With absurd reflexes, the black-haired necromancer manages to dodge in the last millisecond as that lethal silk strand brushes past his face. Pluto looks up and is impressed by the colossal dimensions of the creature, immediately identifying it as a fearsome adult abyss spider. The monster begins to scale the walls and secures itself to the ceiling dozens of meters up, a distance impossible to reach for his ground-based bombers. But instead of getting worried about the aerial disadvantage, the MC flashes a wicked smile and whispers that he was never fighting alone in that cave. A strong blue magical smoke begins to materialize beside the hero, shaping his newest and powerful ranged combat summon, the Skeleton Archer. The young necromancer points his staff in the direction of the giant monster, clinging to the ceiling, and orders commandingly for his loyal marksman to fire and pierce the enemy. The Skeleton Archer pulls the string of his mystical bow with force and fires an arrow, wrapped in blue lightning that cuts through the cave air at high speed. The accurate shot explodes with extreme violence against the body of the giant spider, defeating the creature instantly and yielding 100 extra experience points. As the flaming body of the monster crashes lifelessly to the cave floor, Pluto acknowledges that the presence of that archer perfectly solved his aerial problem. The young man observes his new mystical servant and ponders that, being an evolved high-level elite marksman, the skeleton should be capable of delivering even better attacks. Confident with the new reinforcement in his army, Pluto wields his giant scythe and tells the skeleton archer not to disappoint him in the fight. Looking at the immense horde of monsters, the young man thinks that this place will turn into an absolute clean sweep. The sound of burning fuses begins to echo through the cave, while dozens of bombers prepare themselves with sinister smiles on their skeletal faces. The necromancer commands his explosive warriors to focus solely on eliminating the smaller spiders trying to approach along the ground. An overwhelming sequence of explosions sweeps across the cave floor. In the middle of the fire and black smoke generated by the destructive attack, the hero remains completely untouched beside his elite archer summon. The MC glares into the distant shadows and coldly orders the elite marksman to take care of eliminating all targets that are far away or on the walls. The imposing skeleton archer draws the string of his magical bow, charging an absurd amount of blue electrical energy at the tip of the projectile. In a fraction of a second, he releases the devastating shot that crosses the entire cave as if it were a true lightning bolt, ripping through the darkness of the area. The powerful beam of energy directly strikes the opposite wall, where dozens of adult spiders were crawling together, catching them all by surprise. The system screen displays that the activated skill was the fearsome magical arrow rain, an area of effect destructive technique of the elite servant. Suddenly, the cave ceiling is illuminated by a true storm of blue electrical projectiles that begin to fall in mass upon the monsters. The torrential rain of energy mercilessly pierces the body of each of the adult spiders that were trying to escape the archer's relentless attack. Blue electrical explosions detonate the aerial targets in a spectacular fashion. Showing the tremendous long-range firepower that the young man now possesses, Pluto reflects in an impressed manner that the elite A-rank hunter doesn't just serve for single targets, possessing an incredibly broken area attack. The only issue is the absurd mana consumption, because even with the colossal bonus from the Moonlight Ring, 3 or 4 more of those attacks would drain his energy. The hero smiles with satisfaction upon seeing that all those annoying pests have finally been eliminated and prepares for the next step of his solo raid. Before him, in the deep darkness of the cave, emerges a colossal silhouette with multiple glowing red eyes, indicating the arrival of the fearsome dungeon boss. Meanwhile, outside the portal, the hunters wait impatiently and comment that almost 20 minutes have passed with no sign of the boy. The bloodied warrior assumes that the young man must have already perished inside, but the other reminds him that if he fell solo, the panel would display the failure immediately. He then imagines that the boy is hiding in some corner shaking with fear, but his partner disagrees, saying they know every single inch of that lair and there are no hiding spots. Startled by the possibilities, the warrior asks if the hero is truly facing that entire spider horde completely alone, and the other says that maybe he is. The swordsman mocks the hypothesis, saying that a mere C-rank necromancer, who summons just a few skeletons every half hour, could never fight against that swarm. In silence, the young S-rank hunter begins to ponder thoughtfully about the situation. Admitting internally that he hates the idea of a necromancer clearing that location, he confesses to himself that the imposing posture and absolute confidence Pluto displayed when crossing the entrance portal left a very strange gut feeling. Shaking his head, he dismisses those thoughts and concludes that it is impossible for the young man to win, because even if he clears the smaller spiders, the worst danger still remains. The terrible, insurmountable danger in question is the absolute ruler of that dark dungeon, the colossal and terrifying Abyss Spider Empress. The giant monster attacks with destructive fury, generating a violent crash that makes the rocks on the cave floor tremble before the hero's imposing silhouette. The young man analyzes the creature and admits it is much larger than he imagined, managing to catch the strong scent of decay emanating from the boss even from afar. The Empress opens her terrifying maw, filled with sharp teeth, and shoots her pointed tongue at high speed in the direction of the black-haired necromancer. The youth dodges with tremendous agility in the last millisecond, while the monster's strike brushes past and collides violently against the rocky wall. One of his armored skeleton soldiers quickly leaps forward with his great blade drawn to cover his master's. Strategic step back. With a disturbing calmness and standing upon the rocks, Pluto adjusts his combat stance and mocks the attack, asking if that is how spiders say hello. The young man points his powerful legendary staff at the colossal monster and declares with a wicked smile that he is going to return the greetings in his own way. The giant monster lets out a sharp screech of pain as it is suddenly wrapped in a strong explosion of flames generated by the necromancer's tactical summons. However, the physical counterattack of the Empress launches several undead soldiers away, breaking the bones of the summons against the stone walls. A brave skeleton warrior throws himself forward with his shield raised to absorb the impact of a violent strike that was attempting to hit the MC directly. The furious monster advances through the flames, destroying everything in its path to try to crush the hero, who just observes the charge without showing any fear. The necromancer looks at the creature with quite a bit of seriousness and acknowledges that the Empress truly lives up to the title of dungeon boss by fighting with such ferocity. With his eyes glowing in a terrifying red shade of pure power, the hero commands the colossal enemy to freeze immediately right where it stands. The fearsome fear skill is activated instantly in the monster's mind, causing the Empress to paralyze in dread under the young man's dominant gaze. With the terrible monster finally subdued and unable to move due to panic, the young man walks calmly in its direction, saying that now comes the easy part. His eyes gleam as he orders his skeletal troops to initiate a massive and relentless bombardment against the helpless body of the boss. Dozens of bombers run toward the Empress and generate a spectacular chain detonation, illuminating the entire cave with destructive waves of fire. The ruler of the webs falls lifeless while the system displays the victory notification and grants a colossal amount of 35,000 experience points. beside the immense charred corpse of the creature. The hero celebrates upon noticing that he rose to level 14, bringing his total mana to 260. He is impressed by the insane speed of evolution of his class and plans to do one more run on Apocalypse, difficulty to hit level 15 right away. While his loyal undead soldiers gather the treasures from the cave floor, Pluto notes with satisfaction that his inventory is almost full from so many items. Outside, the young elite warrior looks at the portal with quite a bit of impatience, noticing that more than half an hour has passed since the MC's entry. The group's healer calls him to leave, warning that he can stare at the portal forever, but that necromancer will never manage to get out of there alive alone. The young hunter lets out a discouraged sigh and agrees that Pluto really isn't high-ranked enough to manage to achieve such an incredible feat by himself. He then begins to run to catch up with his teammates who are already leaving the dungeon site. But suddenly, a loud signal sound from the portal echoes intensely and makes the young man freeze in surprise with his eyes wide open. He recognizes that this sound indicates a dungeon record update and falls into complete shock, refusing to believe what is happening. In the large lobby, all the hunters begin to shout in surprise upon seeing that the record for the terrifying abyss spider nest was completely shattered. A female hunter suspects that the one responsible might be that solo necromancer, but a warrior beside her starts laughing out loud, thinking it is just a joke. The glowing panel reveals to everyone that the level 14 necromancer Pluto cleared the dungeon on hero difficulty in just 22 minutes. While the entire lobby falls into a mental collapse, Pluto crosses the portal calmly with his hands in his pockets and an extremely imposing posture. The young man in the green hood runs toward Pluto in total despair, shouting for anyone who wants to hear that he actually broke the record alone. The MC gets quite confused by all those startled looks and wipes his face, wondering if he got some spiderweb stuck on his face. A small mage in a hat runs over excitedly to ask how he achieved this insane feat, and Pluto replies calmly that his bombers took care of everything. But the friendly conversation is suddenly cut off by an angry shout coming from the crowd, accusing the hero of lying flat out. The long-haired warrior advances furiously, questioning how a C-rank necromancer could manage to summon enough bombers in just 20 minutes. Pluto just stares at him with his eyes glowing in purple and wonders in a totally indifferent manner who on earth that noisy guy is. The other hunters around begin to agree, saying that with the standard cooldown time of the class, it would be impossible to get past even the first wave of monsters. The complainer gets even closer, demanding a plausible explanation, and accuses the MC of being a fraud for trying to trick everyone there. He makes a dramatic pause, glaring at the boy while trying to deduce what the secret behind that absurd achievement in the dungeon could be. With a wicked and mocking smile, the warrior asks from up close if Pluto is hiding some kind of dirty secret to cheat in the challenges. The hero stares at the challenger with a lethal dark look while summoning a ghostly purple energy, asking if he truly wants to know the truth. Sensing an unbelievable danger to his life, the warrior takes a gigantic leap backward instinctively to get away from that crushing pressure. The bully begins to sweat in cold fear, shaking in panic as he realizes, from the necromancer's cold look, that this young man has definitely taken lives before he tries to regain his composure, thinking that Pluto would never dare to attack him in public, and that either way, he would still have a chance to win a fight. He points his finger again, shouting that everyone there belongs to large guilds, and questions how a mere C-rank necromancer managed to enter that elite lobby. A blonde female warrior joins the discussion, raising the absurd hypothesis of the boy being an undercover spy from some enemy nation sent to cause trouble. While the atmosphere gets extremely tense and accusations grow, the small mage in the hat gets totally terrified beside the unbothered hero. The long-haired warrior gloats internally upon seeing that his words are manipulating everyone's opinion in the lobby against his target. The two hunters who were observing from afar comment that now the entire lobby is against the MC and decide to stay to see the end of the show. With total serenity, Pluto summons his skeleton warriors, proving that he really is a necromancer, and prepares to explain how he entered the place. The young man extends his hand and displays an incredibly bright golden teleportation crystal that leaves everyone around completely speechless. The entire crowd goes into a panic upon recognizing the extremely rare golden crystal that only high-ranking members of the 5 large guilds have a right to hold. The bully backs away in fear, wondering who on earth this boy is, while Pluto walks peacefully past him, heading up the temple stairs. The hero scoffs, saying they can guess all they want because he just wants to level up and has no time to play detective. The arrogant warrior swallows hard, shaking in terror as he realizes that the owner of such a valuable item is certainly someone he should have never angered. The hunter in the green hood is deeply impressed by Pluto's mental strength for not being shaken even a single bit by all the accusations. The MC grumbles that if Elder Aaron Crowley hadn't asked him to keep a low profile, he would have handled that fool right then and there. He lets out an annoyed sigh, wondering if he possesses some kind of bizarre biological magnet that only draws stuck-up fools into his path. Putting that aside, Pluto focuses on what matters and selects the terrifying apocalypse difficulty on the holographic panel to initiate his next run. Outside, the hunter with the bandaged head observes the portal glowing in a totally different and bizarre manner. He is left completely stunned upon realizing that the young necromancer entered the spider nest once again, but this time selected the apocalypse difficulty level. Already inside the dark nest, the hero comes across a true sea of tiny but extremely numerous spiders crawling along the damp floor. He begins to advance calmly with his head held high, while his numerous army of undead marches right behind him, ready for combat. The young man explains that this type of large-scale creature swarm would be a true nightmare impossible to handle for ordinary skeleton warriors. However, he flashes a confident smile and reveals that for his special gunpowder bombers, that pile of monsters grouped together is a true blessing. One of his explosive warriors is completely covered by the spiders, but the fuse on its fiery head quickly ignites, generating a lethal glow. A colossal and devastating explosion sweeps the entire area, instantly clearing hundreds of enemies and raising the hero's experience bar all at once. The MC celebrates happily upon noticing that the apocalypse difficulty gives far more experience and finally reaches the highly desired level 15 of power. At that very same instant, a golden message appears on the screen, warning that a new restriction break for his necromancer class is qualified for use. The system reveals that now his mana limit has been removed, and every defeat of an opponent possessing magical energy will increase his maximum mana forever. With an alarmingly ambitious look, the young man realizes that from this moment on, all human hunters and monsters in the world have turned into walking mana points. Focusing his attention back on the dungeon, Pluto smiles, knowing that this nest with thousands of spiders will be the perfect location to farm his mana. With a terrifying and wicked smile on his face, Pluto declares that this place packed with spiders has turned into his true personal paradise. A giant abyss spider emerges from the depths, letting out a deafening screech, and charges at high speed in the direction of the MC. But with extraordinary reflexes, the young man takes a slight step to the side while the creature's violent attack brushes past his head. Instantly, one of his elite skeleton soldiers emerges from the shadows, delivering a precise sword slash to protect its master. The sharp blade of the undead cuts through the monster's carapace with extreme ease, spraying bright green fluids in all directions. Another heavy-armored skeleton finishes the monster with a violent axe strike, ensuring more experience points for the necromancer. The system immediately confirms the defeat of the target and grants the first permanent point of maximum mana for eliminating a magical creature. Pluto observes the magical energy flowing and happily confirms that his maximum mana limit has truly risen from 265 to 66. The young man looks at his hunter-archer and coldly orders him to initiate the same devastating area attack to clear the rest of the cave at once. The magnificent skeleton archer draws the string of his magical bow, concentrating an absurd amount of blue electricity around himself. He fires the concentrated arrow toward the ceiling, generating a beam of light that brightens all the darkness of that bleak monster lair. The magical arrow rain skill is activated again, creating several blue light portals that point directly at the spider horde. Thousands of electrical projectiles fall like a relentless storm, instantly eliminating all the hundreds of spiders that were on the ground. The mass clearing of monsters ensures a colossal bonus of over 100 points at once, raising the hero's maximum mana to an incredible 470 points. Pluto reflects that raising this amount of mana through ordinary means would require 21 levels of evolution, but he achieved all of this in just a few minutes. He notices that the bonus only increases the maximum limit, and not his current active mana, but concludes that the remaining energy is still more than enough to finish the location. The young man orders the archer to deactivate his skill to save energy, since they still need to face the great dungeon boss just ahead. He points toward the dark corridor and lets them know with total peace of mind that his gunpowder bombers are going to take care of clearing the rest of the monsters along the path. The fearsome explosive warriors run to battle with sinister smiles while carrying their giant barrels with the fuses lit. Sequences of brutal detonations begin to explode at the back of the tunnel, illuminating Pluto's calm walk and his army's advance toward the final lair. Outside, a group of hunters debates apprehensively whether the young necromancer will manage to break their record in that dungeon on apocalypse difficulty. The warrior with the headband ensures that the strength increase of the monsters is colossal, and even if he passed on hero level, the apocalypse setting will take over an hour. But inside the dungeon, time flew, and with just half an hour into the challenge, the necromancer already finds himself before the final nest wrapped in a terrifying red energy. A devastating series of fire explosions consumes the dungeon boss all at once, making the entire cave shake with the destructive power of the detonations. When the smoke begins to clear, Pluto sighs in relief with his giant scythe in hand, noticing that the terrible boss was finally defeated in a humiliating fashion. The hero celebrates greatly upon rising 2 more levels all at once and seeing that the Empress on Apocalypse difficulty granted an impressive 60,000 points. He gives a smirk, praising the dungeon, and remembers that taking on the challenge completely by himself ensures that he doesn't have to share any experience with anyone. The most important part is that the mana restriction break secured an absurd bonus of 615 more points for him, raising his total energy to the top. He opens the panel and notices that his inventory is packed with equipment, but since none of it works for him, he decides it is time to head to the shop to sell everything. Outside the dungeon, a resounding record update signal suddenly echoes through the temple, leaving the hunters in a complete panic at the system notification. The group leader turns pale from shock and questions how a solo player managed to do in half an hour what their elite team took nearly 40 minutes to complete. The panel reveals to the entire temple that the level 17 necromancer broke the record on apocalypse difficulty with the unbelievable time of 36 minutes. Before all the unbelieving eyes in the lobby, Pluto re-emerges from the portal immersed in an aura of power worthy of a true legendary elite hunter. The young man in the green hood celebrates, vibrating with excitement at the unprecedented feat of seeing someone break 2 legendary solo records on the same day inside that temple. The youth stays admiring the mental strength and mysterious power of the hero, while Pluto himself approaches the small female mage to ask a direct question. The young man in the green hood decides internally that the MC is his ideal hunter and that he will do everything to evolve and manage to fight alongside him. In the future, full of determination, he runs to his leader with the headband, calling the party to initiate another dungeon right away so they can start raising their levels too. But the leader is in a complete state of depression and cries, remembering that he trained for an entire month and even lost an eye just to have his record broken so easily. He walks away downcast, announcing that he is going to give up the professional hunter life to help his mother run their family's simple fish market. The former warrior follows his sad path back home and adds with a dramatic and melancholy tone that unfortunately he ended up losing an eye on the journey. Far from there, Pluto offers a payment coin to the small mage in the blue hat, asking where the exchange guild is located, but she politely declines the money. The hero looks at the girl with a curious and confused expression beneath his black hair, not understanding the reason why she doesn't want to accept the payment. Quite embarrassed, and with red cheeks, the young woman pulls her blue hat down to hide her face and tells him to accept the help as a special bonus. She thinks to herself that Pluto possesses a valuable elite crystal and that she needs to get close to him anyway to secure her own future. With a friendly smile, the small mage gestures for the MC to follow her and guarantees that she will personally guide him to the temple's exchange counter. They finally arrive at the elite dungeon trading counter, where various valuable pieces of equipment and weapons are displayed for buying and selling. The clerk in a suit greets them with professional politeness and asks if the pair of youths is there to purchase new items or sell loot. The man judges Pluto by his low level and necromancer class, thinking that he must not have anything useful in his inventory, and points indifferently to the table. Pluto comments that the table seems small to hold all his items, but the snobbish clerk explains, laughing, that the magical platform can stack everything up. The hero gives a smirk and decides to activate the system function to withdraw all his accumulated treasures and leave the merchant completely open-mouthed. The clerk makes a mocking face of disdain and challenges the hero to show right away just how much equipment he actually managed to accumulate in the dungeon. Pluto simply activates his system screen, releasing an absurd amount of glowing items that begin to come out of his inventory all at once. Suddenly, a true colossal mountain of heavy armor and glowing shields begins to pile up in an impressive manner on top of the counter. Pluto observes with crossed arms and gives a satisfied smile upon seeing that the platform's magical force field truly holds all the stacked items. The clerk's eyes go wide with panic, and he lets out a stuttering shout of pure terror upon seeing that unbelievable quantity of high-level loot. He trembles all over, asking where the boy managed to pull so many rare pieces of equipment from all at once, since it would take dozens of runs for that. Pluto replies with disdain that most hunters split the loot in a party, but since he always plays solo, he gets to keep all the valuable prizes for himself. Instantly changing his posture, the merchant rubs his hands with a flattering smile and asks, please, for the hero to return the next day for the payment. Pluto agrees to come back later, and the small mage takes the opportunity to invite him to visit the huge equipment shop located right next door. The young man ponders that his giant staff and his shadow cloak are already outdated for his current level, and that he truly needs better equipment. He accepts the invitation with quite a bit of interest, and the young female mage celebrates excitedly, guiding the MC with quick steps toward the large marketplace. Upon entering the immense shopping establishment, the hero thanks his guide for her kindness while staring at the hundreds of weapons displayed on the walls. The girl points to a beautiful purple scythe of rare rank that increases the summon limit of necromancers by 1 additional skeleton warrior. She explains that an extra summon is something crucial for the class, but Pluto knows that to ordinary necromancers, that item would be considered divine. Since the hero possesses infinite summons, he simply ignores the weapon, leaving the small mage open-mouthed, not understanding his lack of interest. Trying to get the young man's attention again, she points to a reinforced glass cabinet, guaranteeing that there he will definitely find something valuable. Inside the display case glows a beautiful amethyst ring of rare rank that grants 50 additional points of maximum mana to any high-level hunter. The young mage insists that the ring is perfect because it grants plenty of free magical energy, and necromancers depend heavily on mana to cast their spells. But the hero remembers that he already has the legendary ring given by Elder Crowley, and that with his defeat bonus, he will never suffer from a lack of magical energy again. He gives a smirk, letting her know that he doesn't need more energy, and asks them to look for something else, leaving the girl even more confused by his choices. The small sorceress murmurs in fear upon realizing that the MC does not need more soldier limits, let alone a bonus for his own mana. Unable to handle the mystery any longer, she runs after Pluto, demanding to know what exactly a necromancer as peculiar and powerful as him is looking for. Suddenly, the MC stops walking in the middle of the aisle and stares at the back of the room with an extremely focused and serious look, as if something were calling out to him. A mysterious black smoke in the shape of shadowy hands begins to emerge from one of the display cases, letting out terrifying, ghostly screeches. The dark tentacles of pure, wicked energy stretch across the stone floor and begin to gently wrap around the hero's legs, as if they were inviting him over. The necromancer confesses in surprise that he was drawn in a totally unconscious manner by that mysterious force until stopping right before the locked display case. He stares at the magnificent Underworld King's cloak of demonic rank, which carries the special effect of sacrificing 100 ordinary soldiers to generate an elite summon. The mage runs over startled, asking if he has his eyes on that item, and the MC just calmly questions if there is some kind of issue with that armor. She explains that the item is considered useless because no summoner in the world, even at level 100, can keep 100 active soldiers up at the same time. To sacrifice, Pluto listens to everything in silence and gives an internal smile, realizing that making this mass sacrifice might be impossible for others, but for him, it is a piece of cake. The hero concludes that with that cloak, he will manage to constantly generate an army of elite warriors hundreds of times more powerful than normal ones. He flashes a confident and arrogant smile upon realizing that this dark and legendary garment was literally custom-made for his unlimited power. Even noticing the warning that the item is for display only and not for sale, Pluto whispers with determination that he needs to find a way to get that cloak. The small sorceress is left completely in shock upon noticing the sudden obsession and the greedy look of the necromancer gleaming in the direction of the locked case. She explains that the item dropped from an abyss demonic beast, but since the sacrifice effect was considered way too weak by the large guilds, it became a decoration. The young man touches the glass of the display case lightly and murmurs to the dark armor that it must be terrible for such a powerful item to stay locked up there as an ornament. Looking at his own reflection in the reinforced glass, Pluto promises with quite a bit of seriousness to the Underworld King's cloak that he will set it free very soon. The necromancer turns to the girl and asks if she knows of any special way to obtain an item that theoretically isn't available for sale in the shop. The young mage puts her finger on her chin thoughtfully and reveals that maybe a secret method exists to acquire the garment, but she isn't sure if it will truly work. She explains that the temple hosts an annual hunter tournament, and the grand champion wins the unique privilege of being able to choose any item from the shop as a reward. However, she adds that all previous champions chose very expensive legendary weapons, and nobody has ever tried to take a display item like that cloak. With a confident and fearless smile, Pluto states that everything that isn't forbidden by the rules is allowed, and he just needs to win the tournament to claim the prize. The girl almost falls backward at the young man's audacity and shouts indignantly, asking if he has the slightest idea of how difficult it is to win that competition. She reveals that the event is co-organized by the 5 largest guilds in the country, and that only the most talented and elite members can register for the dispute. The young woman sighs in discouragement, covering her face with her hand, and says that standing out in the midst of so many geniuses and becoming the champion is something harder than reaching for the stars. Completely ignoring the girl's drama, Pluto places his hand back on the showcase glass and repeats to the demonic cloak that he will set it free after winning the cup. She shouts angrily, asking if he even paid attention, and warns that A-rank fighters are just the entry level, since S-rank monsters compete there. The MC turns sideways, replying that he heard everything perfectly, but doesn't care even a single bit about that. His eyes gleam in an imposing purple shade, while he states with total absolute certainty that his victory in that great tournament is already guaranteed. The small mage is left completely speechless, wondering where such massive self-confidence comes from, and if he truly comprehended the danger of the challenge. Pluto asks young Layla when the next edition of the annual Elite Hunter tournament will begin so he can plan things out properly. She replies that it will start in just 2 weeks, and the young man decides to use all this free time to focus on maximizing his powers to the absolute limit. He clenches his fist with plenty of determination while sparks of bluish energy begin to crackle intensely around his hand. The hero plans to recover his mana quickly, since having such a high energy limit would serve no purpose if he couldn't recharge it completely. He lets her know that he is going to head back home to get some rest and promises to meet up with her again at the temple. The following day, Pluto uses his crystal to teleport instantly out of there, leaving only a trail of glowing energy in the middle of the hallway. Layla is left extremely surprised to see that instead of training hard with the little time remaining, the young man simply preferred to go get some sleep. Night falls over the major city, and the scene shifts directly to the humble apartment where the young hero currently lives. After taking a relaxing shower, the young man comes out shirtless, drying his black hair with a towel, and celebrates that he can finally get some rest. However, before lying down, he decides that he needs to verify one last very important piece of information regarding his undead summons. The young man summons his hunter archer and asks him directly how many skills his special marksman class possesses in total. The loyal skeleton servant replies that he possesses 4 techniques and prepares to open his skill panel under his master's command. The holographic screen displays in detail the first 3 special techniques, which involve vision enhancement and destructive electrical shots. The 4th skill, called the star-piercing arrow, consumes mana to fire a devastating attack that completely ignores enemy defense. Intrigued by the absurd power of this attack that deals true damage, Pluto questions the archer about the reason why he has never seen him use this technique. The skeleton explains that the shot requires a long 3 minutes of continuous channeling, which makes it almost impossible to find a safe opening in battle. He adds that if they limit the energy consumption to fire quickly, the size of the projectile becomes way too small, drastically reducing the damage. Pluto ponders that while his current mana solves the size issue, the 3 minutes of channeling still represent a fatal flaw in combat. Putting the worries aside, the youth decides to take advantage of the rare opportunity to lie down in bed and fully recover his strength. The MC orders his loyal hunter archer to stay on guard, watching the room while he sleeps, and the skeleton accepts immediately. Upon lying down, he relaxes deeply and thinks that even though it is just a simple mattress on wooden boards, that bed feels extremely soft. With heavy eyes, Pluto reflects peacefully that he had never experienced such smooth comfort in his entire previous life. Suddenly, the scene goes completely dark, and desperate shouts begin to echo in the young man's mind, telling him to wake up from his sleep immediately. A dark silhouette of an armed soldier emerges amidst the darkness of a past war, shouting in an aggressive manner for the recruit to wake up. The veteran soldier in a cap complains furiously to the rookie for falling asleep during guard duty, risking the safety of the entire team on the mission. The young Pluto of the past appears holding a rifle and stutters an apology to his companion, who ironically was also named Archer. The veteran Archer holds him firmly and shouts that the person responsible for the watch carries the weight of not just their own life, but the entire squad on their back. Another teammate approaches in the middle of the smoke and asks the veteran to give the boy a break since the situation is tough on everyone. The soldier named Caleb questions if the sergeant wants to blame the young recruit for the entire invasion their country was suffering at that moment of crisis. Archer snaps back annoyed, saying they are in enemy territory being hunted like dogs, and any slip on guard will result in everyone's end. Caleb replies that he understands the gravity, but reminds him that the rookie has been without sleep for 2 days and gladly offers to take over the boy's shift. He gives a friendly smile to the young Pluto, commenting that the boy truly has a talent for managing to sleep soundly on freezing concrete. Pluto scratches his head sheepishly and replies, smiling, that he grew up sleeping on the floor, and the other soldier in the cap jokes, asking if he is proud of that. Caleb stares at the horizon with a melancholy smile and confesses that when the war ends, he just wants to be able to sleep in a real soft bed. Suddenly, the deafening sound of a missile crossing the sky rips through the silence of the night and abruptly cuts off that brief moment of peace for the group. The young recruit opens his eyes wide, overcome by absolute despair and shock as he notices the lethal trajectory of the projectile coming right toward them. A colossal and violent detonation consumes the entire shelter at once, obliterating everything around in a fraction of a second with an overwhelming force. The burning and destructive fire of the explosion spreads mercilessly, devouring the debris of that battlefield taken over by chaos and ruin. Pluto opens his eyes suddenly, breathing heavily and with his body completely covered in a cold sweat after waking up from that terrible past nightmare. His skeleton hunter Archer remains motionless on guard beside the bed and lets him know with his ghostly voice that his master has finally awakened. The young man rubs his forehead, relieved that it was just a dream from the past, and notices that the day has already dawned, indicating it is time to start moving. He dresses quickly in his formal black combat clothes and fixes his tie, preparing his spirit for the major challenges ahead. Upon checking his status panel, the hero smiles with satisfaction, noticing that his gigantic mana bar of over 800 points has been fully recharged. With a calm mind and his body at the apex of its strength, he clenches his fist, declaring that the moment has finally arrived to give it his all and release his maximum power. A massive golden light glows at the temple portal, signaling the triumphant arrival of highly renowned elite warriors belonging to the large guilds. The local warriors begin to whisper in shock about the rumor of the mysterious necromancer who broke 2 records yesterday and possesses a golden crystal. Pluto walks peacefully through the middle of the crowded lobby, thinking that he needs to find Layla soon to obtain more details about the annual tournament. Suddenly, Layla herself spots him in the middle of the crowd and waves cheerfully, calling the MC out loud to come closer to her and her friend. The young mage suggests that they visit the Exchange Guild first to gather all the fortune in gold generated by the sale of Pluto's equipment. While walking, Layla looks at him seriously and comments that the young man definitely set up that meeting for another reason. Besides just picking up his money, Pluto says he has an important question and asks if there is any dungeon in the region that houses even more monsters than the Abyss Spider Nest. Layla is startled by the question and explains that more monsters do not necessarily mean more experience, questioning the reason why he wants to torture himself. Seeing that the boy won't change his mind, she gives up arguing and reveals that the only dungeons with that many monsters are the large-scale ones. She explains that these massive locations house tens of thousands of monsters in gigantic maps, where a single challenge can last for several hours straight. The young mage makes a sign with her fingers and warns that the temple has a strict rule requiring a party of at least 3 people to unlock entry. Pluto concludes that he needs to find a party, but Layla reminds him that the teams for those dungeons are fixed and hate rookies, making it almost impossible to get a slot. With a mischievous smile, Pluto concludes that then he only needs to find one more person, since he is counting on Layla's presence in his future team. the mage falls into a complete panic, shouting in terror for him not to include her in his plans because she would never step into that true death trap. Even with Pluto offering gold, she fires back saying that only a complete fool would accept joining two unknown rookies in a dungeon like that. A timid voice suddenly interrupts the discussion, causing both Pluto and the young mage in the blue hat to turn around curiously toward the back of the hallway. The young hunter in the green hood raises his hand shyly, stuttering as he asks if he could join their party to fill the remaining slot. Upon seeing the volunteer offering himself up for danger, Layla makes a priceless face of pure mockery, thinking to herself that the very fool she mentioned actually showed up.